China is taking COVID very seriously. And many of us have been wondering, how is it that their numbers have been so low this whole time? Europe has been devastated. The riots in Europe, in the Netherlands particularly, are so bad that one mayor is saying it's like civil war, or I'm sorry, that we're on the verge of civil war over the COVID restriction lockdowns. In the U.S., we've seen widespread riots and anger. Well, I would say the riots have been primarily fueled by other things, but definitely many people have said that being pent up over the lockdowns and the restrictions has made people kind of angry and go nuts. And there's been a lot of riots because of it. But in Europe, we've seen a lot. In Tunisia, we've seen over 600 people arrested. And the question is, once again, how has China managed to keep everything so tame? Well, it's simple. Better testing. Donald Trump should have figured this out. With better testing, we know exactly how many people have COVID and how to restrict them. And it was simple. China's been anal swabbing everybody to get a better reading. I'm not kidding. It's an actual story from Newsweek. China has been anal swabbing their citizens because they say it's a better test. And I'm sorry, Luke, he brought this up to me and I said, that's not true.
I literally ran in the house. I was like, I told you so. It's coming. It was here. If you remember a couple days ago, I was here. I was like, what's next? They're going to literally start shoving things up of your buttocks. I said this on the show. I said this for years. I ran inside after I saw this Newsweek article and I was like, it's here. It's finally here.
It was
coming to the
Paul.
United States.
He was like, it's happening.
I was like, I told you. And it's not probing. It's not, sorry. It's what was the term that they used? Anal
swabbing?
No, it's anal probing since it goes in 2 inches
and then
inside of you.
And then they say they rotate it.
Yes.
And I'm sorry.
Someone made a very inappropriate joke saying 2 inches. That's a lot in Asia. I'm not going to say who said that, but it's not swabbing. It is
listen,
probing.
The point is, when I heard this, I started laughing because I'm like, it kind of just sounds like they're pushing our buttons to see how much we're willing to accept before we finally lose our minds. But apparently in China, everybody's okay with it.
Is it forced anal swabbing?
In China, everything's forced, okay? They have a social credit score. You sneeze the wrong way, your credit's going to go down, and you can't even go see a movie anymore, and your internet's going to be shut down.
You've got to get tested in order to go in buildings. You get a phone with a barcode. And so if you want to get your test, and the only thing they're doing is shoving stuff up people's butts, guess what? It's either that or nothing. So welcome to the brave new world. China's doing it. Look, but China also welded people into their homes and stuff like that. So I don't know what America would be willing to accept with this, but Dr. Fauci says, hey, 2 masks. Oh my God, why didn't we realize this? If you wear 1 mask, just wear 2. And then I'm kind of like, well, Dr. Fauci, what about 3? Oh, I'm not kidding. Dr. Fauci is now saying we should wear 2 masks. Okay, sure, whatever. I swear, they're just pushing buttons and laughing like to figure out how much we're going to take before we finally snap. And things are getting
I think
crazy.
if they start anal probing people here, they're going to go crazy.
No, I don't.
You don't think so?
I don't think so.
What if it's
Nope.
forced, though? That's what I'm concerned about. Is that they're holding them down
Dude,
and they were like,
they're already
they were doing
saying
this?
that your kids can't
So
go to
they're like,
school.
mouth is no good.
I mean, some people might lose it, but they're already saying like your kids can't go to school, you can't go on planes unless you get your vaccine. Was it United Airlines said all their employees have to get vaccinated now if they want to work there? And people are just like, all right. You know, look, I got no problem with vaccines, to be completely honest. I just don't like the idea of forced anything. So if people are going to get some invasive forced medication or whatever, then I think if they're willing to accept that, come on, man. The vaccine goes in you, it's there forever. And if you got no problem with that, then do you think people are really going to complain about having a swab shoved up their butt? Some people might. Some people are complaining about the vaccine. I'm just saying it's crazy. Okay, anyway, there's a bunch of other stories because we got in like I mentioned, in the Netherlands, there's mass riots, so we'll talk about this. We've got the FBI is now saying they're going to actually be charging people with sedition. Xi Jinping was the talk of the town over at Davos. Liberals are all clapping and cheering for that guy. And this is interesting. The Oregon Republican Party says the Capitol was a false flag, which is a bold statement the media is already screaming about. So we'll get to all this stuff. And then maybe we'll get to this. There's like a lost, what is it, Native American or whatever?
Yeah,
indigenous fortress to fight the Russians found. And I think it'd be fun to talk about some weird and wild stuff. So we'll get into that. Ladies and gentlemen, that was a long intro. And I got to introduce, we have a great guest. We have Alex Holliday of Control Pew. What you do something, you do a thing. Tell me what that thing is, Alex.
Yeah, so I'm part of a community that design and 3D print firearms. And we release them to the internet for free. And people can make them at home.
You're giving people designs to make guns at home?
Yes.
Is that legal?
Yes.
Wow.
In most places, and federally speaking, it is entirely legal to manufacture your own firearms at home for personal use.
We were talking about this a couple episodes ago, and we were talking about the Liberator, and I was like, isn't the 3D gun like it fires once and like it breaks or something? And then people in the chat were like, dude, you are so far behind on the current tech. And I was like, well, I don't know. And so we got someone who does know. Right. There you go. He's chilling. And so we'll definitely talk about that stuff for sure. Of course, we got Luke talking about anal swabs. He's here.
I've been warning about anal swabs and probings for 15 years. I'm an independent journalist, old man that's been doing work on the YouTube channel We Are Change. Check me out there if you want to see years of warning you that the anal probes are coming. They're here in China,
I believe
and
you
it's only going to get worse.
Ian's chilling.
The anal prophecy has come true.
No.
Luke, you were right.
Luke's
You
anal
were right,
prophecy.
Luke.
Right.
Alex, what's the best 3D printer or printers to get to make guns?
If you're on a tight budget, if you only have, you can get in for $200. If that's all you've got to spend, get an Ender 3 Pro. You can get them off Amazon. It takes like 3 days to your door.
Cool.
And you're basically set. If you've got a little more money to spend, go for an Ender 5 Pro. It's a little more robust of a machine. Get you a little further, but they're basically the same machine.
Is it just
look
like
a little bit different.
ABS, like plastic printing?
Yeah, exactly
But
that.
you still need metal parts, don't you?
Yeah, in all of the designs we have now require some metal parts like a bolt or a barrel, but we've also figured out how to easily manufacture these with off the shelf parts. You can mail order from China, so it's really like we've solved all the big problems to get to the gun.
And you're talking about something, I don't know if it's a top secret project. Your secret weapon.
It's a little secret. It's been talked about a little bit in the back channels.
We'll save the secret talk for later once we get to into the nitty gritty. Don't forget Sour Patch Lids is here. She's pushing all the
here in
buttons.
the corner. I'm just thinking about colonoscopies as we're talking about probing people. So I don't know if there's any overlap, but people will do whatever you tell them to do if they think it's necessary.
Before we get into all the news, make sure you go to timcast.com and become a member. Ladies and gentlemen, we got top secret posts. Actually, it's not secret. It's members only posts. And we made sure to put the members at Timcast email to make sure everybody gets through without error. We did a segment recently about the Portland mayor pepper spraying some dude, and we kind of just ragged on him for quite a bit and all that stuff. But once I got another video of Alex Jones waking up Luke, I'm definitely going to milk that for all it's worth. Luke. It's funny. It's not political. It's not news. It's literally just watching some silliness.
I'm still taking suggestions on who I should surprise Tim Pool with when he's sleeping, so feel free to message me that on my Twitter account, Luke We Are Change.
Become a member, help support the show, because we're going to be expanding the members-only content. Of course, this show is always going to be free, and if you really want to make sure that in the event we get banned, we still exist in some form, this is the way to do it. That being said, my friends, let's talk about anal swabs. Yeah. Newsweek.com reports COVID anal swabs for Beijing residents more accurate, says Chinese expert. I'll tell you right away, I'm not going to bury the lead. They've been doing this for a long time now. So, Luke is talking about some prophecy. It's actually already happening. Check this out. They say more than 1 million Beijing residents undergoing coronavirus testing amid a fresh outbreak have been administered anal swabs, which are considered more accurate and raise the chances of detecting COVID-19, said a Chinese disease specialist. I got to stop right there. Okay, I don't believe it. The swabbing in the nose makes sense because it's a respiratory disease. How does it make sense that COVID's in your butt?
In the mucus?
Well, yeah, because you cough it up, right?
Well, your butt has mucus in it.
Does that mean COVID? All right.
If you guys really want to get down with it, it coats the
hold on.
feces.
Does that mean you fart COVID?
Yeah.
Most undoubtedly. No, I don't know about that.
I think there was an article, I don't remember. I think, Lydia, you remember this more.
Yeah.
Wasn't there an article that says that you transmit COVID through farts?
You do. And it
What?
can be an STI. Did you know that?
Yeah, I keep telling you to stop farting all over the place,
Hey.
Tim.
Hey.
We don't talk about that.
All right, they say the key districts of Daxing and Dongcheng began a mass testing drive on Friday after a 9-year-old boy tested positive for the more virulent strain of the virus, first discovered in London and the southeast of England last month. Health authorities in the Chinese capital said they were aiming to screen more than 2 million people in 48 hours. Among them, around 1.6 million inhabitants of Daxing were to be given antibody tests as well as throat, nasal, and rectal nucleic acid swabs. Wonderful. Anal swabs have been in use since last year, including in the major port city of Shanghai. But the method is so far reserved for individuals in potential COVID-19 hotspots, according to an infectious disease expert quoted by China state broadcaster CCTV on Saturday. Quote, since the start of the coronavirus outbreak, we've tested for the virus using mainly throat swabs. Its characteristics are convenience and speed, so it's suitable for large-scale testing. Said Beijing Yuan Hospital's Li Tongzheng, nasal swabs are more accurate than throat swabs, but nasal swabs can be uncomfortable. Well, there's a solution to that discomfort. In some asymptomatic cases or in individuals with mild symptoms, they tend to recover from the illness very quickly. It's possible that there will be no trace of the virus in their throat after 3 to 5 days. What we've found is that in some infected patients, the coronavirus survives for a longer period of time in their digestive tract or excrement than in their respiratory tract. Couldn't you just take a dump in a cup and give them the cup and leave?
The sample, yeah.
No. They want to jam stuff up your butt.
It's got to be fresh.
We're laughing at this. It's like laughing as the Titanic is sinking.
Do you have a picture of the swab by any chance? We gotta throw one up on the screen.
I posted about this story, and everyone's sending me very inappropriate pictures of what allegedly is the swab.
Pictures of Cuomo from CNN
and other items that I can't describe here on this very family-friendly show.
That's right.
But again, the medical experts here are saying that this is going to help the rate of detectability and lower the chance of misdiagnoses. So. Yes. The article also goes on.
I have an image.
Yeah.
I have an image of the swab here,
swab
just
in
to
question?
just to
it,
show everybody.
Oh, okay.
Now
my
I
gosh,
see the
yeah.
screen from
And
Lydia's
Cuomo's,
computer now.
gigantic
Yeah.
cotton swab.
Chris Cuomo.
That's what's happening. Oh,
I'm
sorry,
kidding,
yeah.
by the way. That was CNN
One of the
when
Cuomos.
CNN is doing news, and they're like, "Look at this prop comedy we're doing." Yeah, we
gosh.
get it. It's
Well,
not real.
but also most importantly, the article goes on and says, on Friday, a resident of Tangjiang in Hubei province, about 120 miles east of Beijing, told CCTV that she was given double rectal swabs. Probes. They're really probes because they go inside to 2 inches inside of you. As part of a citywide testing in her area, she said each swab took just under 10 seconds. So you were talking about people being pent up, and they're definitely going to have to loosen up with all these new government testings. And Ian, you were questioning, is it mandatory? Is it voluntary? In China, nothing is voluntary. If you make fun of the government officials will literally take you away at night, sit you down in a chair where you're handcuffed with your feet and hands, and will interrogate you until you apologize for making fun of the government, if you're lucky. Otherwise, a lot of people just get their organs harvested in China for criticizing the government, and of course,
Having the
things
wrong
like this.
religion.
Yeah, having things. This, of course, is not something that is going to be voluntary.
There's a viral video of a dude in a chair, with
that's
braces.
what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And the cops are like, "So why did you say you don't like police?" And he's like, it's all in Mandarin. He's like, "I'm so sorry. I didn't mean it. I was just drinking." And they're like, "You were drinking? You think that absolves you of responsibility? You thought it was okay to make fun of the police?" And he's begging them, "I'm so sorry." It's a black room, and he's bolted down to a chair as they're like threatening him and demanding he apologize and say he'll never do it again. There's another video where a woman turns her phone camera on and puts it down. You hear a knock on the door, and then cops come in and just randomly arrest her. And she's like, "What's happening?" And they're like, "Shut up, you're under arrest."
I think she was one of the people warning the world about COVID. Because a lot
That
of
lady.
nurses, a lot of doctors, a lot of lawyers, a lot of journalists went to jail and are still missing because they were telling people of the world, hey, there's this mystery virus going around last year. And then the Chinese government was hiding that fact, of course, making sure the world was unprepared when they knew. There's some reports and intelligence from November that the Chinese government knew that there was this new strain of coronavirus that was going around that they knew was going to be a major
They
issue.
instructed Chinese nationals in other countries to start collecting PPE, buying it up, and sending it back to China so that they would have it. Other countries wouldn't. That's what they do.
Yep.
I mean, I can't blame them for fighting for their own personal interest or their own national interests, but I can blame them for the freaky authoritarianism and all that stuff. Now, listen, here in the United States, we don't have these anal probe things going on.
Yet.
Yet. Considering Xi Jinping was the talk of the town over at Davos, I wouldn't be surprised if they come back and they're like, "You're not a bigot, are you? Stop being such a prude and accept your probe." Okay, well, we don't have that going on for now, but we do have Fauci saying, two masks. Why didn't anybody think of this? We were all wearing one mask to stop the spit from coming out. Now, Fauci is talking about 2 masks. Perhaps he's talking about wearing a mask on your butt to stop the butt COVID from coming out, but he's not. He's talking about wearing 2 masks on your face. The New York Post says 2 face masks are better than 1, Dr. Fauci said Monday. The infectious disease specialist advised the double masking is a logical way to curb the spread of the coronavirus. If you have a physical covering with one layer, you put another layer on. It just makes common sense that it likely would be more effective, Fauci said on the Today Show. The White House advisor explained that face coverings prevent respiratory droplets and the virus from spreading to other people, as well as protecting the wearer. Oh, now they're saying it protects you.
No, it does.
Interesting.
He's saying it would likely be better, so he's not saying it would be.
He doesn't know.
He doesn't know.
Yeah.
Well, this is also the same guy that just a few months ago was telling us not to wear masks. It's not safe. You don't know what you're doing, especially if you're not a medical professional. Stop buying and using all the masks. And, what's the point? If someone farts and toots anyway, you're going to get COVID. So what's the point of having a mask?
More specifically, is his tone. So this was last year when a bunch of conservatives were like, go buy masks. And the media was like, oh, geez, don't buy masks.
And the Chinese government was buying up a lot of the masks.
Fauci's attitude wasn't just, well, you don't need to buy masks, and here's why. It was really condescending. It was like, oh, you don't need masks. Oh, come on. What's up? A mask isn't going to protect you. Don't bother. And then we even had the Surgeon General saying the same thing. Mm-hmm. And then sure enough, something weird happened where conservatives and the left flipped on the issue. And then all of a sudden, conservatives were the ones not wearing masks and the left were the ones wearing masks. I have no idea how that happened, but there you go. Probably because Fauci said it, I guess, and then Trump didn't wear a mask, and then there you go. Look, I see this story about Fauci saying we should wear 2 masks, and it's, I know it's not the same as shoving stuff up people's butts, but it really does feel like they're just pushing our buttons to see how long until someone just finally gives up and just snaps, goes crazy.
Well, people in Holland, it looks like a lot of them are snapping already, especially with a lot of the civil unrest that's happening there. There's been a lot of protests all over the world that have not been talked about. They're not getting a lot of media coverage. It looks like, the larger algorithms aren't really even interested in them. But I think, I agree somewhat with your point there. But we have to understand a lot of these so-called medical professionals, a lot of these experts, they were wrong from the very beginning. Whether it was their projections, whether it was their recommendations, they were flat out wrong, and they haven't admitted it. They haven't had any accountability. They haven't faced any repercussions for actions that did lead to some severe ramifications that they should be held responsible for. And unless that happens, it's hard to believe them from here. In the beginning, everyone believed them.
That's my issue. Is you've got a lot of people who don't trust the medical professionals and the experts on COVID and stuff. Yet when you talk about how Fauci was wrong early on, they say, well, science is always wrong. That's the beauty of science. You can get it wrong and you fix it later. And I'm like, that's great. So you're admitting that there's reason for people to doubt the scientists? Because look, for the most part, I think the only thing a sane person can do is just follow the standard guidance as it is. It's the best you can do. There's this movie, I don't know if you guys have ever seen it, called The Man from Earth. You ever hear of it? Mm-mm. It's about, it's like a one-shot film where they're all in just a room. And long story short, it's this guy who is immortal. And he tells all these stories about how he's lived through all these different periods. And they're like, you must be the smartest guy in the world. And he's like, why? I only know what everyone else knows. I don't just know everything. And a lot of the old information is bad. And that's the way I see it. For me, look, if they come out and they say wear a mask, I'll be like, what am I supposed to do? Pretend like I'm smarter than these doctors? No, I got no problem wearing a mask. But come on, when you come out and you're like, now wear 2 masks, it's like, I'm already wearing a mask, dude. And besides, what masks are you talking about? What if I'm wearing a crazy scarf wrapped around all the way in my face where I put something else over it? It's just a nonsensical statement. We're already wearing masks, dude.
Yeah, you would think they would talk about vitamin D. You would think they would talk about...
He did. Fauci's told people to get vitamin D for sure.
Okay, that's a big surprise because a lot of government officials, a lot of foreign policy hasn't even addressed that basic factor of health. Of sleep, of stress, of diet, of exercise, of going out there, getting proper sun, getting proper vitamin D. And if he did mention it, there's also a lot of scientists screaming about this from the very beginning, since there are results showing that vitamin deficient people have a horrible time dealing with this. A lot of people are extremely vitamin deficient, vitamin D deficient, especially with all the lockdowns that have taken their ability of even going outside.
You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to clean my mask. When was the last time you guys washed your mask?
What do you mean washed? What is that?
Give it some soap, rinse it off, squeeze it out, let it air dry.
Huh.
What a novel idea.
Yeah.
Oh.
Time to wash your mask, folks.
Do it every
But that is something people bring up a lot. I was kidding, by the way. Yeah, that people keep reusing the same masks and they're getting festering and
Gross.
filthy.
2 times.
There are videos of people getting crud on their mouths and stuff.
Dude, wash your mask. I mean, Fauci, tell people to wash their masks.
A lot of people wear disposable ones, to be honest, though.
That's true.
I guess that's what he's saying. Wear a disposable one under your permanent one.
Oh, that's specifically what he was saying?
I don't know, but there's a picture of people doing it. It's just the weird. It's
Does
the
he have
weirdest
stock
thing.
in the mask industry.
Maybe.
Yeah, there you go. In the Chinese manufacturing plants that produce these
The
goods that
same
get shipped
masks
back to
that
the
protect
US.
you from the virus that came out of China.
Yeah, so I'm starting to think that they told us not to wear masks at the beginning so that China could buy all our masks up and we wouldn't be like getting in their way. And I'm curious why he's telling people to wear double masks and why he's not telling them to wear like the higher technology masks that might actually protect you from the virus.
Or telling people not to fart.
Right, exactly.
Right.
Keep it
Well,
together.
the joke now is that Fauci's eventually going to tell us all to wrap our. What was it, Babylon Bee? I think Fauci says everyone should wrap themselves in plastic to protect themselves
Bubble
from the
wrap.
virus. It's like a woman and she's like all mashed up and tangled in plastic wrap and can't move.
I'm glad you said it because I was going to make that joke.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, I can see it coming.
I mean, my joke was that, and I think I made this joke a year ago. In like 2030, everyone will be wearing gray jumpsuits with no pockets, and they'll have shaved heads, and they'll carry nothing on their person. They'll own nothing, and they'll just walk to and from like public transport and work. And then I realized that although that would probably be fairly extreme, it's not extreme enough for where we're headed in terms of critical race theory. People would have to be. You would have this white box over your body that you held, so no one would know how tall you were, and you'd have a voice modulator where you would type inside your box, and then you do a computer voice. No one would know your gender. No one would know how tall you are. Nobody would know your race. Nobody would know what you sounded like, and that's the only way to ever actually achieve some kind of equality. But then you have the problem of some people just being naturally more talented or faster. What do you do? And then we get into that.
Kneecap them.
No, it's that book.
Harrison Bergeron.
Harrison Bergeron,
Yes.
yeah, where the beautiful people have to like, what do they do?
They wear terrible makeup, or they
Yeah.
like wear bags over their heads, and the really good people at dancing get weighted down, or they get their feet cut off. Or
The
whatever.
smart people have things in their ears that scream random
Yes.
sounds to like interrupt their thinking, so they can't be smart.
Well, they're already starting to cut back on the gifted programs in many public schools all over the United States, which I find kind of crazy to do so. They're doing it because of equality, but you're preventing people from getting a better education than they normally would. And you're holding people back because of other people not doing that well. I mean, it just doesn't make any logical sense to me.
You're saying you don't believe in equality?
No,
You're
I
saying-
don't.
You're saying
Hell no, I don't.
You're saying that you're a bigot?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying a lot of people have gone absolutely mad with this idea that we're all supposed to be equal. When you look at nature, I mean, nothing's equal in nature, and it's all about survival of the fittest. And I think we as humanity will progress once we understand that and open ourselves up to that kind of understanding, which will help us move forward in life more accurately and correctly.
This is something that Michael Malice brought up. He said, how you define the new right is this. Let me ask you a question, Alex. Do you think that some people are better than others?
Yes.
That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he said the right will tell you yes, and the left will give you an explanation, or like justify or something. And I just said my answer was like simply yes. But it's an interesting way to define it, and I see his point. But I'm like, I'm not going to argue with you. It's a very simple statement. Some people are better than others. Now, if you want to get into specifics, some people are better at basketball than others. It's very obvious. But the left views it from a very like identitarian view. Like when you ask them, are some people better than others, they take it to a racial or gender or like, inherent identity place. Whereas my initial reaction was like, that's a very broad question that could mean a bunch of different things. Some people are better at printing guns than I am. And some people know a lot more, are better at me than answering gun trivia than I am. Yeah, absolutely. It reminds me like when I was little, I would always hear like these teenage girls use the word ignorant. They'd be like, that's so ignorant. You're so ignorant. And I'm like, do you know what ignorant means? It means like not understanding or like lacking knowledge. And they're like, no, it means rude. And I'm like, no, it doesn't. Like, I understand the concept you think you're using it, the context you think you're using it in. But I was like, everyone is ignorant in some form. And they would get all angry about it.
Was it annoying when you were young how like sometimes popular people would be stupid and they'd say stupid stuff like that, and you'd be like, have to just deal with it because they were like part of the gang, the popular gang.
I mean, they were smart. They were really dumb, unpopular kids too. And they were, I don't know, where I grew up, it was kind of a
It's
mixed
just
bag.
so frustrating when the people that are like lauded by the crowd are not necessarily the smartest people.
What are they lauded by the crowd for?
Being
Because they're
pretty.
beautiful,
Yeah.
because they're good at sport, because they're fast. I don't know.
There you go. Well, not everybody
But
is
then
smart.
they'd say stuff like ignorance means
But that's
stupidity.
But that's the important point about the question. Are some people better than others? You could be stupid but strong as an ox, and then you have like
right. Well,
talent.
some people
you
are
know?
better at certain things than others, but those other people might be better at certain things than them. So to say
Yeah.
that some people are better than others is not accurate. I don't think
It is.
I think
No,
it
it's
is, but-
situational.
But
like you might be better at
you're
shooting
right.
guns, but I might be better at doing math.
You're
so it
absolutely
doesn't mean that
correct.
you're better than me or I'm better than you.
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
You're
We're
looking.
both better than each other, so it's
Th-
redundant.
This is exactly the point I was just making. When you ask someone if some people are better than others, I'm not making a judgment on a person's value. I'm analyzing a very simple statement about whether some people are better than others.
But that doesn't make sense because if you're better than me at something and I'm better than you at something, then we're both better than each other. It cancels it. It
So
does.
people are better than you.
So you couldn't
Well,
say that I'm
you-
better than you.
did
You
you
couldn't
s-
say that you're better than me.
But you
So
just
the
said I'm
answer
better
would be
than you.
no.
But you can't equate like skateboarding with shooting guns. Are different things.
You
So
could
that's
say
the
some
point.
people are better at certain
This
things
is exactly
than other
the
people.
point. You're over analyzing the question.
No, I'm analyzing the question.
No, you're over analyzing.
I'm not. I'm simply giving you a factual analysis of the question.
I think you don't understand Michael Malice's question
His question is too simplistic.
on purpose.
Yeah.
The point is the right will simply say yes and the left will give you an explanation. And that's exactly right. Whereas we view it very simply, you are going into great detail about what quantifies certain things, and that's new right versus new left. That's exactly his point.
Okay, I don't think I'm on the left personally.
But to Michael Malice's question, you would be.
Okay.
And
Thanks,
that's,
Mike.
well, I guess it'd be probably better for Michael to more accurately define, how that works. But I understand. It's when I ask this of like general lefties, they'll start saying like, well, what do you mean by better? And like, well, not everybody. And it's like, okay, there you go. Like you say no more. That's the point. Different worldviews and different like, I guess as who made this point? Who was on the show? Oh, Matt Brainerd. Inductive reasoning versus deductive reasoning is like, your emotions versus logic, et cetera, and things like that. But how about we derail entirely back to the discussion about, should we talk about the riots in Holland and the Civil War coming to the Netherlands?
Yeah, and tie it in with guns because Alex is here and I want to know about.
Yeah.
Well, they don't have
3D
guns.
printing guns. They don't.
They don't.
No.
But they could.
They sure could.
They could. I don't know if that would be a good thing or not. I mean, perhaps it's a good thing for individuals to have the ability to defend themselves. I think in the context that I'm trying to say is when people are out in the streets fighting and, there's fear of a civil war, maybe we don't want people escalating to that point. The problem is one side already has guns and they're using them. So I'm not saying they're using live rounds on the people in the Netherlands, but here's the story. The Daily Mail says lockdown fury sparks a third night of violence in Holland with hundreds of protesters looting shops, torching cars, and battling police. The Netherlands hit by a third night of rioting on Monday with clashes in Rotterdam, Amsterdam, and The Hague. Police said 184 people have been arrested by Tuesday morning and promised more arrests would be made. Hundreds of rioters had looted shops, set fires, and clashed with police who responded with water cannons. It comes after the Netherlands introduced a coronavirus curfew from 9 p.m. until 4:30 a.m. to bring cases down. Now, I believe it was the mayor of Eindhoven who said that we are on the verge of civil war. And I think it's actually, is it up here? I don't know. They changed their articles so much. Here we go. Rioters first struck on Sunday night in Amsterdam. Eindhoven, what did I call it? Eindhoven and multiple other towns, seeming to catch authorities off guard and prompting warnings from some politicians of civil war. John Joritsma, mayor of Eindhoven, warned bluntly that we are on our way to civil war.
Yeah.
They say despite the unrest, many countries in Europe are considering tightening their lockdowns. This is a impossible conversation, an impossible discussion, to be completely honest. People often ask, like, where's the line in government intrusion until you say enough and then demand a redress of grievances to the point where there's clashes, right? Because I tell you, in China, they're shoving swabs up people's butts. At a certain point, the line has been breached, right? But for now, it is a fact that in this country, the line can never be crossed. There's no line. There's no point. There's like, you could have a bunch of people who have no plan thinking they're going to occupy a building, and that's the revolution. It's not. But there's I think we're at a point where there's a global security infrastructure that's not going to allow for that to happen. So it could all break down at some point when people just lose it, I guess.
Yeah. Well, in the Netherlands, this is the third night of widespread rioting and violence that even some local politicians are saying will continue for days or weeks. They burned down many testing facilities. They're fighting police officers in the street, and this is predominantly over the lockdown restrictions and specifically this curfew, because a lot of people are saying, what, does the coronavirus not infect you under a certain time? Does the coronavirus have a bedtime? And there have even been studies showing that curfews are absolutely pointless and they do nothing except hinder daily life and allow the police to have an excuse to take away your liberties or your money away from you. Alex, you had something to say?
No.
It's complicated.
Yeah.
Because we can go deep in like the philosophical discussion on when you lose like your national sovereignty and you start having those the civil war sort of clashes and armed resistance, and what happens when one side of that when the side of that argument where the people who don't think that their government has the authority to sort of rule over them anymore, what happens when that group doesn't have an equality of arms with their
right,
for lack of a better term, their masters. So, I mean, there's a real like philosophical argument to get into, and you see a lot of it through Portland, through the Antifa riots. A bit of it popped up in DC, and I don't know. It's
you know what I think? The armament of the people changes the threshold for when those people will react violently. And so you look at somewhere like China, and the state is a massive security state with censorship, control of all weapons. There's the likelihood of an uprising is slim to none because the odds are so much against the people. There's concentration camps in China right now. In the U.S., it's a bit more precarious because you have to think about the amount of pressure on an individual to make them act and the capability they have to actually accomplish something. In a place like China or in Europe, the ability to accomplish something when you have an armed state versus an unarmed populace is slim, unless you have critical mass. So the line at which it becomes a civil war, like this Dutch mayor is saying, is further away than it is in the United States. In the United States, you can get one crazy guy with powerful weapons who feels he can actually do something. That's scary to me. It is. Because we want stability. We don't want instability. No. We're not currently dealing with people getting anally swabbed, but we do have the curtailing of our freedoms. I think the question is for the U.S., even with the curtailing of our freedoms, we're still pretty much living in luxury relative to other places.
Yeah. But also against that kind of sentiment that you said, in Europe, all you need is a truck. And there have been incidences where there have been deadly events that have been far more impactful than shootings in the United States because of some crazy person saying, I'm just going to run a whole bunch of people over with a truck. So, that's another sentiment here that we need to understand.
But what I mean is, if in the U.S. they started doing mandatory anal swabbing, I imagine things would break down really fast.
A lot of social justice warriors would probably like that.
They would probably okay.
Yeah, and so maybe if you want to make the argument, then maybe in cities things would just go along. Like we've seen what's going on with New York. They just go for it. But think about that. The cities are unarmed. For the most part, people in the cities are completely unarmed and would just go with whatever they're told. Then just look at the militias in this country and the groups that are armed. They tend not to be living in cities.
No,
so either they're moving out for more freedom, or they're more self-reliant and more, don't tread on me. You look at places like the Netherlands. The point I'm trying to make is you require very few people and much less rage and oppression for an armed population to rise up and say enough. Whereas in the Netherlands, you're going to have people who are like, what am I going to do about it? I can't do anything. I'm on my own. But eventually when you get thousands of people in the street, that's when that line is crossed. So you need more people and more oppression for an unarmed population to finally snap and revolt, which I think is a very simple equation and explains why governments don't want people to have guns, especially Democrats don't want people to have guns, which is why I think, what you're, doing, Alex, it's going to be interesting. I guess the way people say it is the cat's out of the bag. Gun control is over.
Yeah. Can't do much. Sorry, I hit the table. Can't do much about it. It's people, and the kicker is people have been making guns in their homes for the last 100 years before the advent of 3D printing.
Now, what's the laws with that? Because I know some people have, don't really know how clear it is, what they can do, what can't they do illegally.
Right. So on the federal level, it is entirely legal if you are federally able to possess a gun. So you're not a felon, you're not a domestic abuser, there are a couple other criteria in there that I'm not on the top of the mind.
I think you can't be a drunkard.
No, you can be.
I don't know. When you buy a gun, it asks you, are you a drunkard? And if you put yes, they say, get out of here, you can't have a gun. No, for real, yeah.
On
So,
the,
like,
on the
arrested-
form that you have to.
Yeah, yeah.
Arrested for
It
public
asks you if you're-
intoxication.
No, it just says, are you a drunkard or habitual drinker?
That must be an old law.
Yeah.
And I think there's also something
Oh,
about.
are you addicted to alcohol or any other substances?
right.
Yeah.
And I think there's also another section about psychological issues, right? Or
You can't beat
Yeah.
your wife
So, yeah.
yeah.
or your husband.
Right. So there are a couple of criteria that will disbar you from owning a firearm. But if you're able to own it, then you should be able to make it, without any real hang-ups. Mail order parts and straight to your door.
What,
Yeah,
can't, what can't you manufacture locally? What parts?
There aren't any at the moment.
Oh,
Like,
so
the-
you can make a full auto?
you can.
You can legally make your own.
Oh, okay. No, I see. Sorry, I understand what you're saying. You cannot legally make a machine gun because you cannot legally possess a machine gun.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, right. The law actually stops the manufacturing of machine guns. That's it, right?
Right.
You can old grandfathered in machine guns, right?
Right. So there was a machine gun registry before they were forbidden, and you can own those. They're very expensive, somewhere in the realm of like $20,000 for one.
What if you had like a gun with 30 barrels that fired 30 rounds at the exact same time?
That's volley fire, which is legal under the law.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that. See, it's no such thing as a dumb question. huh?
Yeah, there was a revolver that came out recently that has 2 barrels. You fire two 38 specials out of it. I could be wrong, or 222s. But with one pull of the trigger, you get 2 bullets out of 2 barrels.
That's
So
amazing.
only if you want to transfer a firearm do you have to contact the ATF and get a serial number for that firearm. Is that correct?
The jury is out on that one.
Okay.
It
Because the
it's-
ATF
it's-
usually changes its mind,
Right.
more than politicians flip flop,
Right.
And they're all over the place with their definitions, which are very confusing. Their kind of understandings and their legal arguments are kind of all over the place.
Right. So to get into the nuts a little bit, it's manufacturing exclusively for personal use, not for sale or distribution. So if you make it with the intent to give it away, you've committed a felony. If you make it with the intent to sell it, you've committed a felony. If you make it with the intent to use it solely for yourself, for whatever you are using it for, then you're fine.
Wow. So I pulled it up. I just Googled it, and we have it's TRexSmallArms.com. Arsenal Firearms AF 2011 double barrel pistol in 38 Super.
Yep.
So it is a handgun with 2 barrels.
Yep.
It's $4,000. 5-inch slide, double barrel, semi-automatic 38 Super caliber. Fires both barrels with one pull of the trigger. Now, why would you want that?
Because it looks cool.
I mean, I'm not saying you shouldn't have it.
You
I'm
can
just saying,
flex
like,
on
you know,
your
what's-
friends with the same gun,
That's
but only
amazing.
one barrel.
Right.
Like,
right.
look, I'm
got
cooler
2.
than you.
Yeah, I'm twice as
Well,
cool
no,
as you.
but I think about the question the left often asks is like, why would anyone need this? Is there first? I understand the immediate response is it doesn't matter. I don't need a reason. I have a
Right.
Second Amendment right to own arms. That I get. But is there like a real functional or tactical reason to having volley fire or double barrel? One trigger pull, 2 bullets.
Well, I mean, you're putting twice the amount of projectile into whatever you're shooting at. So if you're hunting bear with an AR-15, you're gonna want more than one round. But you really shouldn't be hunting bear with an AR-15.
So we talked about this though. We talked about full auto is actually bad tactically. Tactically.
Generally speaking, it just wastes a lot of ammo. In most military type engagement, you're going to be shooting at an individual target. There is an argument for it where you're talking about suppressing fire coming from machine guns. But when you start getting into like fully auto out of a 30-round magazine, it's kind of not great. Like it's useful for the military. There's a reason that they have it. If you're in a pinch and you just click the button over, fine.
Don't they call it spray and pray?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Spray and pray.
I just wanted to do a clarification also. When Nancy Pelosi lately had said that she wanted crewman machine guns on these things, they're actually called crew-served weapons. My friend that was in the Army was like, please tell everyone.
Well, we
Nancy Pelosi.
just read what Ken Cuccinelli said, and he said crewman to machine guns.
He's part of the patriarchy.
Crew serve.
Just kidding.
Patriarchy.
Crew,
So
crew-served weapons.
you can't make full auto,
Right.
but that's full auto's not even a good thing anyway. So it seems kind of redundant.
Yeah,
you
I
know?
mean, like, again, there's an argument for it. If you can control it, then you can be accurate with it, and that's a training thing, which you need exposure to train with it. So there are arguments for and against.
Are there guns that will automatically fire when they target the person?
You're talking like an automated turret system?
Yeah, like if you turn it and it sees the person or the target or the deer or whatever, then it will fire when it sees it. Yeah, is there anything like that?
Kind of. There was a company called Tracking Point. They made a really fun optic. And I think a later iteration, they built it into a full rifle platform where you're hunting and you see the deer and you want to hit it at a specific point to get a
Which
good,
you have to.
clean kill on
Yeah.
it. And so it would wait until you would pull the trigger, and then you would like adjust your position so you would line up properly. And once it lined up properly, it would fire. It's been years since I've seen this.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I'm remembering it exactly. So don't quote me.
Well, you want
on
to make
this.
sure you don't wound a deer because
Right.
they're going to run away and they're going
Right.
to be injured and they're going to be suffering. There's a specific place on the deer, I think in the lung heart area.
Lung
Correct
heart,
me
yeah.
if I'm wrong. That you have to, if you shoot once, it's a
a pretty good sign that it's going to be a short,
a clean kill and the animal's not going to suffer.
Right.
I was wondering. I've read a lot about how certain places have like really high crime. Like I hear West Virginia has a lot of high crime, and like a lot of these places outside of cities have high crime. They say New York has low crime, and I'm like, why is it then that people in West Virginia, there's like not many police around, and then why, like and people just get along just fine or get by just fine, and then why is it in New York there's like we're hearing these massive spike in murders and things like this?
Wasn't some guy just beaten and stripped naked in the street in New York?
Yeah, I remember
Probably.
watching that video.
Yeah.
There's a video of it.
Yeah. I mean,
Jeez,
I've seen stuff like that in real life in New York City growing up. I've seen crazy things that would spark people's PTSD if I described what I saw growing up.
This is from 6. Sorry, Luke. This is from 6. I want to pull this up. 6 hours ago, man seen stripped and beaten in New York City. Attack was known gang member with lengthy criminal history. Victim is expected to survive. So, the 26-year-old victim was in the area of Canal and Allen around 11:30 a.m. on Friday when the group of about a dozen men and women jumped him and took his cell phone, pants, undergarments, and shoes. They then used a sharp object to slice him in the head, hands, and torso. The victim was taken to a local hospital where he's expected to survive. On Monday, the police commissioner, Dermot Shea, released a 50-second video of what he called a brazen broad daylight attack. The footage shows the man running away from the group as they catch up and begin beating him. Police sources told the New York Post the victim lives in Brooklyn and had just returned from Atlanta. The violent crew had reportedly been staking out the nearby bus stop for the man's arrival. Police said they fled in several vehicles after the attack. A law enforcement source confirmed to Fox News that the victim had been linked to the violent Mac baller Brims gang. If the shoe was on the other foot, he'd be part of that gang, the source said. So it's just gang violence, I guess?
Yeah.
This is an interesting thing. Like Chicago is an interesting gun conversation. Chicago's got a bunch of people with illegal guns, and they go around shooting each other all the time. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what the left uses as an argument for gun control. Criminals who take the guns and then are causing problems and murdering people all over the place. I guess for me, I've always kind of wondered, if the guns are already illegal and they're committing murders with them, why would passing a law stop them from committing a murder, which is already illegal? I mean, like, that's the worst crime.
Yeah, well,
like killing somebody.
We see a lot of liberals.
Or one of the worst crimes.
We see a lot of liberals talk about gun homicides, and they keep forgetting that most of them are from illegal guns in jurisdictions that already banned them. Other gun deaths are because of suicide, and then I think the third highest level of guns death rates are from police officers shooting people. So if you're for gun control, you're not really for gun control. You're for having individuals with guns take away other people's guns at the threat of using guns. That's essentially what you're for, and you should just be honest about it, that you want people robbed of their ability to defend themselves, while, of course, the politicians want literal machine guns protecting them all the time.
I like the idea of having an armed society is kind of cool, because if a group does rise up to overthrow the government with guns, which like in Holland they're probably afraid of, you have the rest of the population also armed to protect the country from the
Civil war.
overthrow.
Civil War.
Well, ideally, I mean, that's possible. That did happen in the 1800s, but ideally it would be a swift justice. They always say that with
It
war.
wouldn't, man. I mean, we've got 75 million Trump voters, 80 million Biden voters.
But it's better than, I think, a totalitarian dictatorship.
Yeah.
The threat of civil
Well-
war is better than a totalitarian dictatorship.
the threat of civil war. It's better to know that there's a possible, like, the idea that a civil war could happen means that the dictatorship is less likely to happen.
You always want to reduce harm. And what usually reduces harm is individuals being able to defend themselves, because people then don't take offensive, aggressive actions against them. They say an armed society is a polite society, and I think we're seeing that in places like Florida and places like Texas, where people have the ability to protect themselves, unlike other jurisdictions like Chicago, New York City, and a lot of the other big cities where you can't, and gang violence and has been skyrocketing because all the gang members know people are defenseless. People can't defend themselves if they do have a firearm.
But now in many places, I think in Chicago, you can have a gun. But I think it's really difficult. I grew up there, and for the longest time, like, all weapons were just outright banned. I think the only legal weapon you're allowed to have is a rubber switch. You know what that is? It's like a long piece of rubber with a little ball at the end, and you whack people with it.
What about a knife?
No, knives, that's illegal.
Really?
Yeah.
In
Knife-
Times Square, the biggest arrests that were made were individuals that came in from out of New York who had pocket knives. The biggest arrest that happened, I forgot the exact statistic here, but I heard a very wild one that the majority of arrests in New York happened because of tourists having guns on their
Oh,
hip.
right.
Yeah.
I imagine it's like a knife of a certain length.
Yeah, it's like longer than 3.5 inches or something.
Okay.
So that's like a pocket knife. You can get a certain pocket knife. Or maybe you've got like a utility knife or something you carry around for
like nail clippers.
Yeah, and then they're like, well, that's a crime. Can't have that.
Alex, do you know how many 3D printed guns are in existence? Is that even measurable?
Not really. I mean, I broke 25,000 across socials, so I would imagine there's at least 25,000. I would surely hope that there are many, many, many times that number, and I believe that there are. But I would have no one. There's no way to count, because most people are making them in the privacy of their own home, and if they're doing it right, they're not telling anybody.
So we were talking about this like last week, I think, about ghost guns, and some people were saying they were illegal, and then a bunch of people were like, no, they're totally legal. So ghost guns are legal, is that correct?
Yeah. So if you a minute ago we were talking about like how you can manufacture any gun you manufacture at home for your own personal use is what politicians are calling a ghost gun. Like they are one and the same. So it's not just 3D printed stuff. It's not just like the 80% kits that you buy. It's anything that you're making at home.
So how does the 80% kit work?
So basically, a company went to the ATF and said, "Hey, is this?" Okay, I need to back up. The ATF regulates one specific part of a firearm. That is as a firearm. It's the serialized part. It's the one part that you actually have to go to an FFL, a gun store, to buy.
And what part is that?
It varies based on the firearm.
okay.
On a Glock, it's the polymer frame. On an AR-15, it's the lower receiver where the trigger and the magazine go into. So that's the serialized part. Now, what these 80% companies did is they went to the ATF and they had a partially finished one. They sent them the lure and said, "Hey, is this a firearm yet?" And the ATF said no. So the industry called it an 80% complete firearm.
Yeah.
So it's not quite a firearm. And you can buy it. It ships straight to your door, and you finish it on basic tools. There's a couple kits out there. One you do with like a DeWalt router or something, some kind of just common hardware tool, or you can do it with a drill press.
But then you still need to buy that last piece.
Right.
Wasn't there something going on where people were saying the ATF was raiding people for having these kits?
Yeah. So there was one specific kit done by Polymer 80 called the Buy, Build, Shoot kit. And they marketed it as everything you need in a box to build a gun in a couple hours. And you would click it once and you add to the cart, and they would ship it to your door, and then you'd spend an hour putting it together. And the ATF said that this box of parts that wasn't a firearm was close enough to the definition of a firearm and marketed in such a way that it could be construed as a firearm, that it was actually a firearm.
So,
Which doesn't make any sense
Right.
from the legal perspective. But this is the ATF we're talking about. They, fairy dust and magic.
So in terms of 3D printed guns, you're printing what, like the frame, the grip, the stock, or what?
Yeah, basically any external part that has complex geometry, so some things that are going to be difficult to make by hand. And then looking specifically at like the FGC9, The barrel and the bolt are made at home out of common material. And again, the barrel, we're finishing it with basically 3D printable inserts, and we're using electrochemical machining to get the internal dimensions of the barrel to the right size and rifle it and cut the chamber. And it sounds really complicated.
It does. I was like, what?
Yeah, I know that shot really high for
Yeah.
a lot of people, but there's a good write-up on.
Whoa. It was auto playing a video about the FGC 9.
Yeah.
Continue.
Anyway, a lot of that went over a lot of people's heads. There's a really good write-up. It sounds really complicated.
Yeah.
It's not. It's salt water and an aquarium pump in a 5-gallon bucket in your garage.
So in total, how much do you have to spend on supplies, materials, and everything you need to make a FGC 9?
Okay, so the hardware to get started, the printer itself, $200.
Yeah.
Filament, $40. The parts to build the actual gun, your internals, about another $200. And then your benchtop power supply and your aquarium pump to do the electrochemical machining is like another $100 on top of that.
So when you say electrochemical machining,
Right.
you have salt water in a tank. How does that work exactly?
So you're pumping water out of a bucket, salt water out of a bucket, through the inside of the barrel, and you've got an electrode in the barrel that's stripping material at the atomic level
awesome.
off of the inside of the
That's
barrel
cool.
to bore it to the right size for your bullet, and then cut rifling, and then cut in your chamber.
Wow.
sorry.
That sounds really hard to do.
Yeah.
Yes, it's
Sounds
not.
awesome.
It's not hard.
Because someone
no.
gave us a super chat a couple days ago. They're like, no, it's so easy. You could just print an FGC 9. And I looked in and I was like, this looks hard.
Yeah.
No,
This looks really hard.
It looks hard. It's super easy.
What caliber is FGC 9?
It's a 9mm.
9.
Oh,
Is that
yeah,
where the
that's why
9
it's a
comes from?
probably.
Yeah.
No. And then the FGC means something else.
Yeah.
That,
F gun control.
Oh, yeah, that gun.
Are there
Yeah.
other printers than the Ender, like next level above the Ender 5?
There are. You start to lose the value per dollar that you're spending, so you can get into like a $3,000 or $4,000 printer pretty quickly.
What would be the value of that?
I mean, you're doing the same thing you're doing on the Ender 5.
Does it
at
print-
about the same quality? You might get an upgrade in materials. You might be able to print with some fancy nylons and stuff like that, some higher temperature stuff. But I mean, for the price difference.
What about metal? Do you print metal?
No, so metal's a whole nother manufacturing process, and it's a lot more to get into. So there's a couple different methods of doing the most popular, the cheapest one, and I'll start at this is $50,000 that you're spending to get in here.
Wow.
It's a laser that melts a layer of powder, and then the printer scoops another layer on top of it. It does another layer of melting.
This is really fast though, right?
No,
Oh, it goes really
it's-
slow.
yeah, it's pretty slow.
Oh, wow.
Jeez.
And then once all that's done, you have to take that part, you have to send it to another company to do the final, like, actually make it a solid part, because it's a bunch of particles that are stuck
Right.
together.
It's got to go in like a kiln or something.
Right.
Like where it heats and solidifies or something like that.
Yeah, and then you have to add material, physically add additional material
I
to
see.
it. So it becomes a lot more expensive, a lot more costly. There's applications for it, but not for, like, the home gunsmith. I'm going to do this in my garage for the cheap. Like there are filaments that have metal embedded in them, but they have the same problem where it's just a bunch of metal particles that are just stuck together, and then you have to send it to another company to finish it.
I got to be honest, man. You say it sounds easy, but I'm like looking at these websites, and it's just there's hurdles to the average person can't just do this.
Yeah, no, everything is a learning curve, but we've tried to make it really, really simple. So in order to get started, I'm going to plug my site. Go to theguide.controlpew.com. That'll get you your first 10 steps into 3D printing. You're not 3D printing guns yet. You're just 3D printing. You're just learning how to use the printer, how to use the software, how to get it dialed in so it actually functions and things fit together properly. And then the next step, right? Find a gun you want to print it.
And
put it
Control
together.
Pew is CTRL
Yeah.
PEW.
CTRL PEW. That's theguide.controlpew.com.
And just to clarify, having and making your own FGC 9 is legal federally. Is that correct?
Yeah, federally it's legal. State laws may vary. I know Maryland has some funny business going on. I
Yes.
know California has funny business going on. I know New York has funny business going on.
Well, California and Maryland banned flamethrowers. They're the two states, and I know this because I own a flamethrower. They banned flamethrowers, which is just utterly ridiculous and so un-American.
I'm sorry, I thought this was America.
People are getting in trouble with the Elon Musk flamethrowers.
Yeah.
Because people are buying them, and it's called not a flamethrower by the Boring Company. And then people are getting the feds showing up at their door being like, that's a flamethrower.
Well, the funny business is that's actually a weed burner. It's not a flamethrower. It just has a little bit of flame that sits in the end. It doesn't throw the flame anywhere, and it's really depressing, and I'm really sad about it.
Now, importantly, making your own 3D printed firearm like the FGC9, is there any legislation against doing this locally, statewide? Is there anything against 3D printing on the books now? Because I've seen individuals like Chuck Schumer who literally explain the black what was it the Silk Road in such a way where it promoted it on national television a few years ago, now talking about the ease of 3D printing firearms. There's a lot of misunderstanding, but is there any legislation proposed or on the books now against 3D printing, federally, state, or local?
Not at the federal level. At the state level, like I said, California, Maryland, New York, I think there is some legislation that exists. Although, how far you get with that, I don't know. There's a couple people. Reno is a guy from a YouTuber from California. He's working on a 3D printed California compliant Glock and AR-15. So there are some specifics to work within those sets of laws, but I'm not as well read on the individual states to be able to answer that with any level of competence.
Well, even traveling with firearms, you learn about so many of the jurisdictions, reciprocities, and you literally need to hire a lawyer to explain it to you because of the different made-up laws that each politician interprets in their own unique ways, which is, again, not universal and very confusing and leads a lot of people in trouble.
Yeah,
who don't know the law.
I'm so disappointed because I tried for I sat for 3-4 hours. I dug through the law to come out here with my trunk of fun.
Yeah.
And just show you guys what we're working with. And I couldn't do it because I just couldn't figure out how to navigate the whole thing properly. And I was like, okay, I can't.
Yeah.
I can't even begin.
Have you, in your time 3D printing and experimenting, have you ever figured out new shapes to build weapons or guns with that make them more effective?
I mean, a little bit. So we've done a lot of modifications on the AR-15 to make it a lot more robust. There's a version now that has an additional bracket on the side of it to hold the buffer tower, to add some extra support to the buffer tower so that it doesn't break off when you're shooting, which was a problem that we had with the early 2015, 2016 versions of the AR-15 lore. So, I mean, we've come along, we've evolved in a lot of different firearms. So, when you're talking about specific shapes, not really, but it all varies based on the forces applied to each firearm because they all act a little bit differently.
Yeah, I'm thinking to print little hooks on the side where you could stick extra cartridges and then to hold.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, that stuff, there's a lot of that actually. Thingiverse doesn't allow you to do gun stuff, but there's a lot of gun stuff on Thingiverse. It's fantastic. So,
Weird stuff on Thingiverse too.
Well, there is that.
A lot of weird stuff, is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Thingiverse.
Weird stuff.
Scale models of the rectal.
Yeah.
SWAB.
Oh,
Yep.
make your own rectal
No, but
swab.
not even a joke. They got weird stuff on Thingiverse.
Oh, that's awesome. The future is now. It's unstoppable.
Wonderful.
They're going to make 3D printers that can print 3D printers.
Yeah,
It's just around the corner.
So, funny story. 2012, the RepRap project, which started the whole 3D printer business in the commercial, home use, they were designed to have a bunch of 3D printed parts and then have a bunch of common off-the-shelf parts where you just printed the stuff you need or you had someone else print it for you, and then you assembled your printer and you could print another set and give them to someone else, and they could build their printer.
So cool.
So that was the origin of this whole thing, which is another reason why the whole 3D printing thing itself can never really be stopped, because the origin of everything is open source. It's all out there. It's all public domain.
They could put some kind of tax on 3D printers where you have to get a stamp and then only one office in the country issues the stamps and they're swamped and people can only get one every 6 months they do with many things to get around the law. You know what I mean?
Right, but prove that I bought the printer to, You know what I mean?
Well, I mean, like,
Oh, yeah.
you know, what we've seen.
You got to catch them first.
What we've seen with a lot of regulations the government does when they can't ban something is they put regulatory hurdles in front of it that are so severe, people eventually just stop doing it.
I have a feeling that in the future they'll be trying to ban the information, like the actual CAD files of,
That's already
of the
happened.
data.
Yeah, they're already
and
trying,
that,
yeah.
So when electricity becomes free, like once we tap fusion and we're in ignition, it's going to be the information that's the currency of the world.
You know what's
And-
funny? I was watching Star Trek earlier, and I'm just thinking about this now. Like, what if, like, could you imagine someone walking up to a replicator and being like, "Computer, Glock 9mm, Glock 17, it's not loaded. Give me 50 rounds." It just appears, and then people have guns.
Right? Wouldn't
You
that
know.
be great?
Atomic printing.
Isn't the data market more valuable than the oil market in the world already?
That wouldn't surprise me.
So, I mean, when we're looking at the advancements of technology, it goes both ways. It provides people a lot of opportunity, but it also has an opportunity to take away a lot of the freedoms and liberties that we take advantage of. So it's going to be interesting because when you look at 3D printers and trying to ban them, I mean, essentially, when you boil it down, it's somewhat of a simple technology of just making plastic hot and then moving around a machine. So it uses that heat and that melted plastic to shape something in a different form. So I mean, it's going to be very hard to ban 3D printers, but it's something that, as you said, could happen and could be regulated in a way where it's impossible to get.
For the FGC9, could you just buy like standard parts for other guns? Is that legal? Like if you bought a barrel or certain parts that you needed? And
Yeah,
then you-
so there are a couple mods that exist already. One to make it take Glock barrels. Another one to, by default it takes an AR-15 fire control group. Funny story. That AR-15 fire control group is also like a 1-to-1 copy of one that you can get out of an airsoft gun from
Really?
on AliExpress. Yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
But so that becomes extremely easy then.
Yeah.
Like what's the regulatory issue then? Do you still have to get serialized? Do you have to get it registered or anything like that?
No, so if you're building it for personal use, there's no serial number, no registration, nothing. It just exists and it's yours, and now you have a gun.
So you can buy the metal parts you need.
Yep.
And then 3D print the rest, put it together, and you're good to go.
Yep.
That's crazy.
Do you ever use resin printing?
I've started messing with some of it. The biggest problem with resin printing is it's structurally weaker than FDM printing or the plastic printing. So the part you get isn't as strong, so it breaks sooner. So I've seen a couple people try and do like Glock frames in their resin printers, and they don't end well. No injury to the user, but
They just break.
they just break.
Yeah.
How long does this like? So we were talking about how the Liberator. I remember when it was first being developed, it would get off like one or a few rounds and then just break itself. But that was no metal parts, right?
Right. Well, it
Except
took
for the firing
a
pin or
common
something?
nail. Yeah.
A common nail.
Yeah.
And how would that just be a one-off or what?
Well, okay,
One round?
so you can get more than one round out of a Liberator. The video that's commonly cited is one from like the Queensland Police, who printed a really crappy version of it. They didn't follow the instructions, and this is critical. Follow the README. There's a README in every package. Everything comes out. It's got the instructions. Follow them. But they didn't follow the README. So their print was junk, and it blew up.
But did it actually fire though? Like one
yeah,
round?
it did fire the one round. It also blew up.
Did they get hurt?
No, they had it on a stand.
Oh, okay.
But I know Cody in his 2013 video fired 3 or 4 rounds through his on video, on camera, in succession. So, I mean,
you just put a nail in it.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
What do you think about the new Biden kind of proposals for gun control? Have you looked into them at all?
I mean, I've tried, but they are not very coherent and
Yeah.
don't really apply to a lot. It sounds like a universal ban on all things.
Pew pew.
Yeah, and okay, enforce it.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, I think they will.
No, they'll
Law-abiding citizens obey the law.
Can't enforce it. That's the
Yeah.
problem with the amount of guns that are being printed. There's just
That's
no
the
stopping it.
issue. That's the issue.
Looking at this last year alone, just with like the reported background checks, there's something like
10 million new shooters.
I feel like we're butting up against 4 million background checks.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of those background checks have more than one gun, and not all of those background checks actually complete or end in a sale. But 4 million is a lot.
I think it's way more than that, actually.
I feel like it would be too, and I'm ballparking numbers. So again,
Well, so I think the guy from Federal Ammo put out a video about the ammo shortage and said that we're looking at 7 million new shooters.
oh geez,
So that means background checks has to be over 7 million.
Yeah.
Because some people buy more than one gun.
yeah.
So
A lot of well, actually, no, that's not fair because some people are already gun owners and are buying guns. So maybe you're right. Maybe it is 4 million.
So the data that comes up when I just
Oh no, wait, I'm
search for
sorry.
this-
It would have to be more than 7
Yeah.
million, regardless if you're a first time shooter or not.
Yeah, the data that comes up that when I just searched for this is that nearly 5 million new gun owners have joined the 100 million plus gun owners already in the United States in 2020, according to recent estimates from the National Shooting Sports Foundation. So some of the data also shows that 40% of all firearm sales are going through first-time buyers. So of course, there's a lot of people. I mean, I've saw this. I started doing trainings with my Special Forces Green Beret friends in New Hampshire, teaching people who are first-time gun owners how to properly use, how to properly clean, use their firearms this summer because there was a demand for it and there was a shortage of professionals willing to train people how to even safely use and operate a firearm.
Let's segue into this next story. From Newsweek, fact check. Did Missouri shop say no guns and ammo for Biden supporters? Guess what? Fact check, true.
Yes.
It actually happened. They say President Joe Biden preached that the country requires unity to overcome its challenges in his inaugural address last week as it remains divided. With the Capitol riots earlier this month, blah, blah, blah. In Missouri, depending on the presidential candidate one voted for, some local residents might not be able to obtain guns or ammunition at one store. Austin Peterson tweeted, "My local gun shop announced last night they do not have any guns or ammunition available for Biden supporters. The comment section of howling leftists is delicious like hot apple pie with ice cream. Let's keep it going."
I love him.
They say the claim. The tweet from him is the claim. A user from the social media forum Gab posted a screenshot of an article from the Gateway Pundit, an online political news blog that says, "We report the truth and leave the Russia collusion fairy tale to the conspiracy media." With the headline, Missouri Gun Shop announces they don't have guns or ammos for Biden supporters. They have the actual post from Facebook here. It's true. Trigger Firearms and Reloading LLC, based in Jefferson City, Missouri, recently posted to its Facebook business page, "We don't have guns or ammo for Biden supporters. Sorry for the inconvenience." The company that lists itself as a gun store on the platform has received more than 3,000 interactions and more than 1,000 shares on the post with mixed reactions from users in the comment thread. Reached by phone, Trigger Firearms and Reloading LLC hung up on Newsweek's request for comment about the Facebook post, declining to respond. Gee, you think? Facebook user Terry Plotner wrote, "Private company, so they can do what they want."
Yeah.
But in a comment responding to the gun shop's post in apparent support. The ruling, true. They did say this. They will not sell guns or ammo. So what does that mean? Like you walk in and they're like, "Who'd you vote for?" And
I
you're
like
like,
that.
"I voted for Joe Biden." Get out.
Yeah.
Who's going to admit that? The gun shop.
I don't think they're going to admit it. I don't think they're going to be asking, but this is great PR to bring attention to their gun store. I know a gun store in New Hampshire that literally had Joe Biden as the salesman of the month a few weeks ago, and that brought in a whole bunch of attention and a lot of people angry and a lot of people pissed off, and he's like, "I love it. Give me all the attention." The guy was also a fan of We Are Change, which is awkward walking in there, and it's like, oh, of course. Yeah, that's me.
Where
Yeah.
where are the people going to banks asking for multi-million-dollar investment to start primer companies or powder companies because of the shortage of all this ammo?
Yeah.
Like now's the opportunity to get on the ground floor.
In fact, can you 3D print ammo?
We're getting there. So we've got a couple of people working on it. Developments are coming. We've got projectiles. We've got casings. We've got half the chemistry. We're working on
3D
more.
printed projectile.
So we're 3D printing molds that will let you cast projectiles in any caliber and diameter you want.
Oh, wow.
Because in many places in the world, you can't buy the molds.
Well,
you can here in the
but
US.
incredible.
Let me ask you, would you provide all of your schematics to Biden's voters?
Sure.
Yeah.
I don't care.
Yeah.
They're going on the internet for free.
Yeah.
Anyone can download them.
Yep.
Go nuts.
Everyone will have them if they want them. I guess that's the point, if it's freedom.
Yeah.
It's you as an individual have the ability, have the technology, you can do it. I was thinking about why these liberals, like these Biden supporters, are so concerned and willing. Well, first of all, let me say they're willing to support a man who says he's going to outright ban all gun sales and accessory sales online. Did he want to ban ammo too? Online sales of ammo?
Yeah, I do recall.
Yeah, he wrote a lot of vague, generalized language about not allowing people to buy a firearm within a certain amount of period, close to another purchase of a firearm. He talked about banning online sales of anything gun-related.
How could you
anything.
vote for him and then actually go and expect to buy a gun?
Yeah.
And that's a weird question outright. Like, how many people are actually going to this gun shop and saying they're Biden supporters who want to buy guns? I guess they exist. But it's like, all right, I'll tell you what. You have to give it to me. Like it's being confiscated. You don't.
And it's interesting that this is. You got a stink bug in there.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's interesting that this is happening in Missouri, because in Missouri, this is also where the McCloskey case happened. I'm still trying to look up the latest information about what's happening with them, but they're the couple that walked out with firearms with very poor trigger discipline and very poor aim discipline when a BLM, pretty much protest broke down the fence of their door and they say threatened them. So I'm still trying to find out exactly what's going on.
What should they have
right
done?
now.
Like, had their guns pointed down at the ground?
Well, when you see, I think it was Patricia McCloskey.
Yeah.
She literally
was
had
brandishing.
her finger on the trigger, and she was moving the gun around in a place where it was rightly behind her husband's head. Like,
Whoa.
you're not
Yeah.
supposed to do that. That's not smart.
That's not smart. I feel like everything else was appropriate given the information that I have. Like it was a violent crowd, and they're confronting you on your property. So I feel like that's okay to point a gun at them with your finger on the trigger and be like, I'm actually going to shoot you if you keep coming at me.
They were on his property in a Castle Doctrine state.
Right.
So it's like in some states you can shoot someone before they even get on your property. If in order to prevent someone entering your property, some states allow you to just shoot somebody.
That's hardcore.
Yeah, and so there's like I don't know the full details, but some states like New Jersey, I think New Jersey has duty to retreat, meaning you're in your home in the middle of the night and you're allowed to own a gun, and then someone breaks in. If you can flee your home, you must. But it's really funny because I was talking to even a cop about this, and he laughed and he was like, "Where are you gonna go? Like, it's your house. Where do you go? It makes no sense." And I was like, "Yeah." And then in other states, they have Castle Doctrine with no duty to retreat, but a duty to enter your home. So, like, let's say you live in, Maryland, and you're on your front lawn or something, and you see someone coming towards you, you have to go into your house first. Then if they try breaking in, you can defend your home. In places, I think, like West Virginia, I'm pretty sure West Virginia's like, you see them on your property, you can shoot them.
Yeah. In
That's
New York
just
City,
like-
you defend yourself. You hurt the perp, you go to jail for the crime of hurting the perp. So
Yeah,
I know
yeah.
many instances and cases where people had violence brought upon them. They defended themselves, and because they left a mark on the attacker, the aggressor, they went to jail.
Really?
Yeah.
What, you're supposed to do
Yeah.
no harm?
There's even stories in the United States where people were violently attacked, fought back, and with extreme cases of even people trying to kill another person, that person defended themselves and they went to jail. So there's a number of cases. It all depends on the jurisdictions, and it all depends on who the attorney general is. And this is why we've seen individuals like George Soros literally bankroll attorney generals all throughout the country that, of course, will play favorable into the agenda, into the narratives that they want to push.
The moral of the story is simple. Don't live in blue states or blue cities.
Yeah.
Yes.
You have to go somewhere where you're allowed to be reasonable, defend
And
yourself.
when you do go, leave all of those policies there.
Yes.
That's amazing. You see this story earlier about a guy from California moved to Texas and then was like really upset and angry. Like he called it was not a conservative utopia, and it was like monoculture. Just didn't like it, so he leaves. And it's like, you know what, man? That's a good story. You know why? He left.
Yeah.
He didn't like it. He left. It's remarkable because we have so many people now fleeing these big cities and going to these red areas where I can understand why this store is basically saying no Biden supporters can buy guns, because you've got Democrats from big cities moving to red areas, bringing those policies with them, and then they want to buy guns and then get them banned later. What's the point? Like create grandfathered in guns that only you can sell, like full auto. What do they cost? Like $20,000 for like a belt fed full auto machine gun.
Belt fed, you're going to get way up in there. But
Because it's grandfathered in, the only way to
Right.
own it is if it's an existing.
right, there's a finite number. A lot of people want them.
So maybe that's the plan. Maybe it's a bunch of rich people being like, if we get guns banned, then only we have the guns and they'll be worth $1 million.
Huh.
There you go.
That's a racket.
Yeah, the guy who moved to Texas and then back, I mean, one of the top reasons he left is because the weather was oppressive, that there was no public land, that there was no snowy mountains, that people in Austin were rude. But
You went to Austin. Austin's
the
Democrat.
liberal,
Yeah.
yeah. They have a liberal mayor there who goes to vacation in the Caribbean islands while telling everyone to stay home and not travel because of COVID. Just like most Democratic politicians who don't follow the law. But I mean, this guy sparked an interesting discussion. But I do believe media organizations like the Daily Mail went too far. They kind of doxed him. They released public information about his house, where he lived, his family photos, and I'm like, this is too far. I mean, people are enjoying calling him the new Karen and dunking on him, but for me...
But it was his old house.
Yeah.
He didn't live there anymore.
Well, I don't know. They're showing how his house in Los Angeles, San Diego, and his house in Texas that he had.
Yeah, he doesn't live at either of
It's
those.
still a lot of personal information
Yeah,
that's not
yeah.
really needed there, and a lot of people...
And a lot of
yeah.
people were ragging on the guy, and I'm like, but he did the right thing.
Yeah.
He moved there,
Yeah.
hated it, and left.
Exactly.
There you go.
If you don't like it, and you move, that's fine, and we shouldn't be criticizing him. He does spark an interesting conversation, which I think we all should have, and that should be it.
You know what I think ultimately the biggest problem is? It's that conservatives who live in conservative areas understand what city life is like to a certain degree and don't care for what people do in cities. But people who live in cities have no idea what rural life is like and want everyone to live under the rules of a city. Like, so I talked about it before. If you live in Manhattan, even I think Luke accidentally came out in support of gun regulation when I said, what happens if you live in New York City and you got a 556 and someone breaks into your cubicle apartment and you said maybe don't allow certain calibers? And I was
well, maybe some individuals, we had this argument. I'm like, Tim, you should get a shotgun. I don't know. My walls in my RV are kind of thin there.
Yeah.
Well, so the point is, I'll ask you, Alex. In New York, for instance, I understand the right to bear arms, especially to defend yourself. If you live in one of these cubicle loft apartments where you got 30 people surrounding your 10 by 10 cube that smells like sour milk, and someone breaks into your apartment, a certain bullet's going to go through walls and potentially hit other people, and that could create a huge risk.
Yeah, so all bullets are going to go through walls. Like, there is no bullet small enough that it's going to stop in drywall.
Even like a hollow point 22?
Yeah.
It would go through, but I mean, like,
but just assume that it's going to, because this is sort of the danger you get into with gun ownership of you're responsible for wherever that bullet goes, period. So if it goes through who you shot into the 12-year-old and 2 apartments down, well, that you may have shot the guy, yes, but the consequence of that, was you've created an unacceptable consequence of that. You killed you shot a 12-year-old. So, I mean, this is something that a gun owner needs to be conscious of. This is something that you get through exposure to firearms in general, is you develop this knowledge over time.
Man, could you imagine living in New York City and there being a gun shop in Times Square where they're selling like a 308 and you can just buy it?
Well,
like,
to also
all right.
clarify, I'm not for the regulation, but there is a particular gun culture that needs to be talked about, because when we went out to the range, we met a lot of random individuals in the middle of the woods, away from all the roads, and they were all courteous. They all looked you in your eye. They all talked to you. They all treated you with respect. There was no attitude. There was no crap thrown your way. There is a particular gun culture that takes safety very seriously, that makes sure that you don't point your muzzle at people regardless of whether the gun is loaded or not loaded.
Yes, but Luke, it's not about gun culture. It's about regular people.
Yes.
Like, think about how. Remember you made that video about being on the subway with all those people everywhere?
Yes.
So Luke made this video a long time ago about being on the subway with millions of people.
Just keep going. You got nothing else to lose.
And they
That's
never
the name
talk
of
to
it.
each other. But how often, like we see videos of attacks, they happen. But how often does the average person walk through New York, walking past all these people, and no one just randomly starts beating you or stabbing
Same way
you?
with driving. You never really veer the car over and ram into someone.
I know. When I was 16, and actually I got my license when I was 18. But when I was like first starting to learn how to drive, I was shocked when I realized the cars don't frequently bump into each other. I was like, how's that possible? You got to park. Cars got to bump into each other. And it's like, well, sometimes when you're parallel parking, you might bump somebody. But for the most part, millions upon millions of cars every day drive within inches of each other and never touch. And I was like, wow.
Especially taxi drivers. They drive like crazy.
Yeah.
Freaking, I don't even want to
Now
say it.
think about that. And then when we went to the range and there were some other dudes there setting up targets and they had a bunch of guns too, I have no fear or no concern about them shooting me or anybody else because I don't regularly get attacked by random people. especially when you're at a range when people are going there for a purpose.
Well,
people who live in cities are paranoid and terrified that someone's gonna. You know what it is? Maybe because there's too many nasty people who work in these offices or who are on Twitter, and they know that they're bad people. And they're just worried about someone coming to their office and, going postal or something.
Desperation can breed violence, obviously. And in cities, sometimes you have poverty and hunger. But trust is like such an integral part of being human. We got to where we are as this socially constructed species by trusting each other.
And also, I think people, when they decide to purchase a firearm, they understand that they're taking a very serious responsibility, that it comes with a lot of training, a lot of educating, and a huge patience towards trying to understand the huge ramifications. And I think majority of people do that.
I thought the first thing everybody did when they bought guns was to go out in the parking lot like Yosemite Sam and just start firing wildly into the air.
Is that not what you did, Tim?
Yeah.
Heck,
With some revolvers.
Yeah.
What kind of gun do you think Yosemite Sam was using? Is that like a 45 ACP? 45 long Colt.
I would say it's a 44 Magnum. But
I'm thinking about like the stereotype of the character he is and what kind of
Six-shooter.
bullet they used back then.
Oh, okay. Hold on.
I don't know. Someone
Maybe
in
a 38.
38.
Yeah. I don't know.
I'm sure someone in the super chat will correct me.
I'm sure.
Probably.
Someone in the chat will correct me.
Speaking of corrections, I do want to go back. We were talking about Nick's earlier, Nick's background checks. So the 2020 annual total was 21.1 million.
Background check.
Background checks.
Wow.
So again, not all background checks result in a sale,
Yeah.
and not all background checks are 1-to-1 with firearms.
Right.
And not all states require background checks to buy a firearm.
Wait, really?
Yeah. So if you have a permit, like
Right,
in
right.
Iowa, I
Yeah.
have a carry permit in Iowa. I don't have to do a background check.
Right. A conceal carry or?
In
Regular.
Iowa, it's just a carry,
Oh wow.
I think.
And then if one person buys 20 guns, they only need to do one background check.
Not if you have a
not if you have
permit.
a permit.
You just walk in and you go, I'll take that.
It all
that,
depends
and they
on
hand
the
it to you.
state. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's to clarify, the permit is a background check.
Yes, you had to get one to get the permit.
Right,
but
right.
That was just one.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's weird that
And years
so
ago.
during the March for Our Lives protest, I went down there in a good faith attempt at talking to people. I can't tell you how many people were like holding up signs saying ban assault rifles. And so I would talk to them and be like, I just want to ask you about your sign. And they'd be like, yeah, what about it? And I'd be like, well, assault rifles are illegal and they've always been. And I'm wondering if you were aware or what your goal is with the sign. And they would go, oh, and like one lady like folded it up and she's like, I didn't know. And I'm like,
What's an assault? I mean, it's kind of a vague, redundant
No, assault
question, but
rifle is definition.
how would you define an assault rifle?
Well, it's not really defined. So
well, assault rifle is
Assault-
selective fire rifle.
yes and no, because that's in the legal definition. That is a machine gun.
Right.
So the assault rifle is like the populist term that politicians like to use
Well, it's
to
assault
scare
weapon.
people. Assault weapon.
Assault
is-
rifle is a rifle that has selective fire, so you can do single, burst, or full auto.
It
Right,
has to go-
in the colloquial, that is, but I think this is a
Legal
language
term is a
thing.
machine-
We're talking
machine
about
gun?
legal terminology. This is the machine gun because they're talking about legislation and passing laws.
What the legislature, what the Democrats tend to do, and some Republicans, is they say assault weapon, and they can't define what an assault weapon is.
Right.
So like we were talking about this. I don't know if we were talking about it on the air, but like the M1A is illegal in Maryland, but the SCAR. What does Luke have? The SCAR 22. Oh, I shouldn't.
SCAR 20.
SCAR 20. I shouldn't be talking about that publicly, I guess. But anyway, oh well, too late. Cat's out of the bag.
Too late.
The M1A is illegal in Maryland because it's a weapon of war, I guess. But it's like the M1A is it fair to say it's like relatively archaic? The M1 Garand was what, World War II?
Yes.
Yeah.
And so it's not the same as like a modern AR-15 that could shoot the same caliber, which is probably more efficient and easier to use.
Yeah.
So the point is the assault weapon definition is like nonsensical almost. And I know gun owners know this, and they've known this longer than I did, because you see the memes where it's like, this is illegal, this is legal. They're literally the same gun. It's like minor differences.
Assault rifle means selective fire, which does that always mean that it has a full auto selection, single burst or full auto?
So going back to the legal term, the machine gun is any weapon that fires more than one bullet with a single pull of the trigger.
Oh, so burst fire.
So burst fire, full auto, anything of that nature. When you talk about assault weapons, assault rifles, these are vague and undefined terms, which is why
I'm pretty sure assault rifle is defined. So it was popularized by Hitler, the term assault rifle, and it's a selective fire rifle that uses an intermediate cartridge and a detachable magazine. They were first put into mass production and accepted in wide use during World War II. The first rifles were the German STG-44. Assault weapon is the nonsensical term that has no real
Like a
definition.
flamethrower could be an assault weapon. They assaulted,
There's some
trenches
handguns
with
that are
those.
assault weapons.
I guess what I'm
Grenades are
trying
assault
to
weapons.
the language I'm trying to focus on is like what's in U.S. law, because assault weapon and assault rifle aren't defined anywhere in U.S. law.
Except for by Hitler, apparently.
except by Hitler
Assault
and-
rifle, selective fire, burst
Right.
fire. So they think ARs are assault rifles by
Right.
Hitler's definition.
And the reason they think that is because they look very similar to the common combat rifle issued to our, the U.S. Army.
ARs don't fire burst.
But they don't fire burst. They're not machine guns.
So they're not assault
So
rifles.
they're not any of
What
those
if-
categories.
So you mentioned volley fire earlier, right?
Right.
Let's say you had a gun with like, let's say it was a 5.56 with like 15 barrels.
Mm-hmm.
What if when you pull the trigger one time, it goes like I run in a circle, like in a sequence? Is that full auto, or would that be considered volley?
I think that's considered volley fire.
So it would function effectively.
I don't.
The accuracy would not be the same as full auto. Actually, it might be better.
I mean, we're chasing into the territory where like I'm not a legal expert and I don't actually know. Also, like I feel like it all depends on the mechanism, because if you pull the trigger once and it's like a physical, well, even then, I don't know how you would initiate all of that. We get into a technical argument, and you would need to send it to the ATF to be evaluated.
Right.
There's some crazy guns. So I just Google searched it. There's the S333 volley fire. It's a prototype 6-barreled pepper box styled pocket pistol.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of things. Like what is this one even?
Is that
shoot?
binary fire? Is that what we're talking about?
No, so binary
No.
fire is a whole nother thing where
Yeah,
you
that's
pull the
cool.
trigger
Yep.
and it fires one round, and then you let go of the trigger and it fires another round.
Yep.
And this is not a machine gun because the law specifies a machine gun is a single operation of the trigger. So just pulling the trigger is a single operation, and letting the trigger go is another operation.
So is that legal?
Yeah. Except in some states like Iowa, you can't have binary triggers as far as I'm aware.
What if you just had multiple triggers? So you could like play the guitar like, and you're going brrrr with your fingers like playing the bass.
I mean, design it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like there's nothing that says that you can't make it and then see what
See what happens.
see
Oh
what
yeah,
happens.
like you have a trigger, but it's actually 3 small slivers of triggers that you pull all 3 triggers, and then it fires 3 rounds.
No, you need 3 fingers to pull 1, 2, 3, and you can go 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3.
You might not actually.
You might not.
be able to just line 3 triggers up and pull them.
Well, then they might consider that single trigger pull.
Well, no, because you have 3 distinct triggers and 3 distinct operating mechanisms within that.
Call a lawyer.
right?
Yes.
We're
Call
gonna-
a lawyer.
You could have
It's
9
almost like look,
triggers with one on each finger.
It's like bump fire. It effectively allowed people to fire full auto, and so they're like, no, that's got to be illegal. And it's interesting because it does, right? So it's just people are going to keep finding different ways to make different kinds of guns. Eventually, there's going to be this weird shaped, octagonal box with like pipes coming out the sides,
Exciting.
and you put your hands in it, and then it does full auto, and it's some crazy loophole to the law that allows it to function. And you're playing the accordion, and it's like.
I think I'm familiar with the bump stock. Can you explain the bump, how it seems full auto?
No, all you, man.
Okay, so when you're holding the rifle, the stock and the rifle itself are not fixed together, so they slide, forward and back. So you're pulling the stock against your shoulder.
Come up on the mic when you're telling
Sorry,
me.
you're pulling the stock against your shoulder, and you're pushing like the front, the barrel, the handguard forward, and then
What happens is when on where your finger goes, there's actually a stop. And so your finger isn't on the trigger, it's on a piece of plastic.
Oh.
When you pull it forward, it pulls the trigger into your finger and then recoils back.
Oh, so you just keep pulling the trigger to you.
You pull the gun forward
Oh.
and it pulls, the trigger hits your finger, bounces back. You pull it forward, it bounces back. So by pulling the gun forward and putting that force, it's going brrrr.
Interesting.
So they made those illegal. But bump fire as a technique, which was a lot of people were complaining about, like if you want to bump fire, you can just do it if you know how to do
Learn
it.
to do it,
you can loop your thumb through your belt loop and then
Yeah.
wrap your finger around the trigger and just sort of push forward a little bit, and it'll just bump fire.
Yep.
Wow.
So that's why a lot of
super
people.
easy to do.
But I think that's interesting because it's not going to stop there, especially with 3D printing. The FGC 9 looks kind of crazy compared to other guns you're used to seeing. It's only a matter of time before they'll keep trying to make rules, and eventually they're going to try and make one all-encompassing rule, and it won't work.
That's
So
what I'm afraid of. If the government makes a law they can't enforce and become a total mockery of them.
That's a real threat. And then what happens when people have no faith in the system to enforce
gotta
its
be
own
careful.
laws? I don't know, man. We're already at a point where if people really wanted to, they could get a 3D printer and make guns.
Hell yeah.
How hard was it back in the day to make a gun? You know, like I'm talking hundreds of years
Smith
ago.
and Wesson.
Getting someone to actually make the metal, it took hundreds of years to go from like muskets to cartridges. That's crazy. And then think about how long it's been, like the rapid development in weapons technology over the past 100 years. It's kind of crazy. Like it's just nuts.
Yeah, they used to have like like gun manufacturers were huge, like single companies and super popular. Smith and Wesson. I don't really know.
They still are.
But now there's just hundreds of thousands of gun manufacturers. I would imagine. I mean, literally,
Well,
if there's
now there's
people
just
printing
regular
them,
people
yeah,
who can make their own
exactly.
guns.
Right. Now everyone is a gun manufacturer.
Can you start a gun manufacturing company with little oversight using 3D printers and then, or I guess you would have
Serializing
to.
them?
I mean, you could. There's, from the business perspective, there's a lot of hurdles to overcome, like your financial processing is a problem with all the financial censorship that's going on.
Yeah, doesn't MasterCard stop? Didn't they release a statement that they're not going to allow people to use their credit cards at gun stores?
I don't know if
I
they
think it was
actually
MasterCard
followed
that
through
did
with
that.
that or not.
I remember that was a big issue. But what are some of the other financial restraints?
Well, even like you're considered, the Obama administration put forth Operation Choke Point, which classified firearms dealers as, or anyone in the firearms space, as a high risk business, and that added a whole bunch of additional restrictions on who they could do banking with and credit card processing with. And it really limited, so like none of the major credit card processors will work with you if you're a business. Well, most of them won't. There are a very, very few, but your service with them is really limited based on, the political climate these days. We just had, so there's a company that does crowdfunding, like GoFundMe, for gun related projects called Gun Dynamics. Their credit card processor that canceled their contract with them. I think today. I think this was today. So it's. And just, I don't know what the reason or any background on this. I just heard that this happened.
Crypto's the way to go.
Yeah, I mean, what else can you do?
Cryptocurrency.
So-
The remarkable thing about cryptocurrency is that it doesn't matter which one you use.
Mm-hmm.
Not even. So the Minds token, do you know what it's currently trading at?
It's ranged between like 33 cents and $1.25, I think.
You know what doesn't matter? The value of the token. Because I'll put it this way. Let's say this gun company gets their credit card processor shut down. So they announce that, you know what? We're going to use Minds tokens. And then all that matters is I can then buy Minds tokens, the correct value, send it to them. Then they can immediately transfer it into U.S. currency through a regular market. So it doesn't matter what the credit card company wants to do. There's a way to transfer the value instantly.
Mm-hmm.
Boom.
I was thinking
Cryptocurrency, bro.
about a gun that
Decentralization.
shoots crypto, or like every
What?
time you pull the trigger. Hold on, it sounds like a joke now, but in 50
I
years
love it.
we'll look back on this. That every time you pull the trigger, it charges your account.
No, it writes to the blockchain so you know when the bullet was
Oh,
fired.
that's a good idea.
Cool.
Maybe it's a good idea. It depends on if
Right.
you want mass surveillance. You know what I mean?
Depends on execution and who has access to that data.
Right, it's an idea.
Right.
Yeah.
It is, yes.
Yeah. Tracking when bullets are
Whoa,
fired.
That's cool. And where they went,
Interesting, yeah.
Well, I don't know how you transfer where they
where
went.
they land,
If the gun has GPS on it.
if
I
the
don't-
bullets have GPS.
Well, now we're getting
Like
into
those-
smart guns.
those
that's
depleted-
a
Yeah.
whole nother.
Like the depleted uranium bullets that are left over in Iraq are devastating. They're like in
You
the
might-
dirt,
but-
irradiating people.
Munitions.
But you know where they were shot. You don't necessarily know where they would go. Like they can't put a GPS in the bullet. You know what I mean? Well, I don't know. Who knows what crazy tech the military has at this point? For all we know, they got little flies with cameras on them that fly around. There was a cool project 10 years ago of these really tiny drones that were like this big, and they flew like dragonflies.
Those
Yeah, it
are
was
so cool.
That was
Crazy.
10 years ago.
10 years ago.
Yeah.
Okay, it was like 8 years ago.
Nano drones.
I mean, they weren't nano; they were pretty big.
There probably are
They are
nano
But they were
drones
really
now.
light and they had cameras on them. And it was a Kickstarter, I think. I don't know what ever happened to that project. But there are tiny little flying drones, man.
It's
They
a
got
stink
them.
bug that keeps dive bombing you.
Yeah, I know. They're spying on us.
I'm afraid of
Flies.
nano drones that'll fly in people's ears and kill them.
Like in
You ever
Black
see
Mirror.
that?
weapons.
Black
Yeah.
Mirror, where
Yeah.
the bees killed everybody, the robo bees.
Good stuff.
It's the future.
Anyway,
yeah.
I wonder if we'll come to a point where people start 3D printing like you can buy disposable guns like disposable cameras. Like you walk into the shop, it's like I just need the 20 shot, and it comes with the magazine preloaded, and it can't be reloaded. It's done when it's done, and you throw it in the garbage because it's just like plastic with a nail in it.
I'm most excited about 3D printing ammo. And I know you talked a little bit about it. Do you have any information you think you can have?
It's still very much an alpha sort of development. Like I said, we're still working at the chemistry to get smokeless powder. We're still working out like the actual construction of the round and what kind of calibers you can use and what kind of pressures you can get. So there's a lot in development, and if you guys are chemists and you're interested in getting in this space, this is somewhere we need help.
I heard you can make bullets out of bat poop.
Say what?
I heard you can make bullets out of bat poop.
Technically.
What about human poop?
Sure.
No, because bat has something specific in it.
Well,
Sulfur?
coronavirus, but
Well,
Yeah. Yeah, something else. Like I was reading how they would make black powder back in the day.
Yeah, it doesn't have phosphorus in it.
Is that it?
I don't know.
I think so.
I don't know.
I don't know how to make gunpowder, black powder,
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah, phosphorus.
Yeah.
Smokeless powder is the better.
yeah,
Safer.
smokeless is what's in modern cartridges. Black powder is what they used to use, what a lot of people still use for certain types of hunting, but it's easier to make.
So what, like the original bullets had tons of smoke that would come out?
Yeah, it was really just a lot smokier.
Oh yeah.
And they transitioned because if it got wet, they wouldn't fire. Is that the problem with them?
That was more of a problem of like
Flintlock
having the
pistols?
whole muzzle loading in general, where everything was just exposed to the elements all the time. So
AKs can fire when they're soaked, right?
well, everything can fire when it's soaked.
Oh,
You
wow.
can dunk an M4 in a pool and still fire
Yeah.
it.
In the bullets
crazy.
too. The bullets
Yeah.
get wet, they'll still fire.
Yeah, because everything's encapsulated in that cartridge.
So when you're printing, you can print the casing of the bullet out of plastic. Is that?
No, not yet. So we're not there yet. We're getting there.
Like ABS,
Because like
just
even
straight up.
well, like shotgun shells are plastic, but they have the metal
Right.
primer cap, right?
Yeah. So the shotgun shells is a chemistry. There is a guy working on printable shotgun stuff. It's the Liberator 12K project. It's another cool one. It's not entirely 3D printed, similar to the FGC9 where you're using off the shelf parts, but it's a 12 gauge that
Yeah.
you can print, and it functions pretty well. It's still in beta. He's doing a lot of. He's been testing it for like 3 years. He's going thorough on the testing.
I was watching that movie
So-
News of the World, and it's really interesting because if you don't know the history of guns, but Tom Hanks' character has birdshot, but he has brass shotgun shells that he loads, and he like pours the birdshot out. And then, spoiler alert, if you haven't seen the movie, you've been warned. There's a scene where he's fighting with people, and all he has is birdshot. He runs out of bullets in his revolver, and then this little girl puts coins in the brass shells, and then he shoots and kills a guy with coins.
I think Mythbusters did an episode on that.
Saying
where
it
they
wouldn't
tried
work.
Yeah, it didn't work very well.
But it whether or not it would work, it was interesting, this idea that shotgun shells used to be brass and reloadable, basically.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
I mean,
Now it's just plastic.
polymers are still very new in like the history of humanity.
yeah.
Yeah.
So before polymers, what kind of soft metal did you have? Well,
Right.
you had brass, and you
Well, they
could
started
bend
doing
it.
they started doing paper shells.
Yeah, paper.
Yeah, because it just blows the whole thing and sprays it out anyway. So
Yep.
They're working with like recovering plastic, melting it back down in like an anaerobic environment with no oxygen back into like liquid oil, and then you could
Wow.
use that as a printing filament.
Oh well.
And you can also grind up the pellets and melt the pellets that way a lot easier. So if you could start making ammo out of recovered plastic and like scrap metal, I think that's the key. You need the primer, obviously, which I don't know, carbon. I don't know if you ever mess with graphene at all as a.
I haven't, but I'm not. I'm absolutely not the chemist. Like I have no idea what's going on. It's magic to me.
If we could pull carbon out of
But-
the carbon dioxide and help make primer out of that, that'd be interesting too.
Yeah.
I'm really spitballing here.
Well, how about we go to Super Chats and see what everybody else has to say? If you haven't already, smash that like button and go to timcast.com, become a member to help support the show. We're going to have more bonus content for all y'all coming up later tonight. So let's take your questions and comments. David Young says, excuse my lack of knowledge, but what's a grifter, fence sitter, and milquetoast? People keep calling you this, but just sound like silly kindergarten insults. Okay, a grifter is someone who pretends to have opinions in exchange for money. A fence sitter is someone who actually has no strong opinions, is sitting on the fence, and milquetoast means your opinions are extremely weak. I'm impressed that I can be all three of those at the exact same time. All right, let's see. Dominic Bristow says, I am also a gorilla.
Indeed.
That's wonderful. And you might notice that the I am a gorilla shirt is now pinned above the, I believe it's pinned in the chat,
Should
so you
be.
can
Oh, I see
buy
it in
that.
There, yeah.
Let's see. Mao Demighty says, you had me at Bum Bum Probe. Love clickbait. It's not clickbait, though.
No, we did it
People are like,
first.
this is not real. I saw people in the chat saying, it's not real, it's clickbait. It's a real story. We didn't make up the headline.
Newsweek,
They're
baby.
literally doing it. Zinger says, yo, Tim, I'm permabanned from PayPal. Do you plan on using any other payment processors? Check out Coin Payments if you haven't heard of it. I'd love to subscribe, but literally can't. We are talking about setting up something just like off PayPal, I guess. We'll figure it out. The whole system on timcast.com is relatively new, and we're just trying to build it and make sure it works and then, grow. But we're going to figure it out. Gerald Armstrong says, Tim, talk to Sargon to get Count Dankula on Adam's show. Sure. I've also been talking to Sargon and Dankula to get him on this show, and COVID makes it just very, very difficult to do.
Dankula has family obligations, too.
Yeah. Let's see. 5882-300 says, new member here, was hoping to help you or anyone in the Geodome quest with a shout out for my buddy's company, Thunderdomes. We design and make custom cheap domes. Hope you'll give us a look. P.S. How did you not finish the jingle? Which jingle? I don't know.
I'll remember.
We're looking at doing domes, but man, is it really hard to buy land right now. Mm-hmm. And the longer it takes, man, all the rich people fleeing the big cities are buying up land like crazy. Which is kind of a bummer, man. Stump says, this is eerily similar to the debut South Park episode, moving my retirement portfolio to Astroglide. Oh, jeez, man.
Smart man. People have been, because I tweeted the story, people are sending me a lot of South Park images of poor Cartman during that very famous South Park episode where he was probed by the aliens.
He was probed. Cargoosh says, rectum douche for victory against the silent enemy. To quote Emperor Biden, we need a full-scale wartime effort. Yes. Michael Gilly says, Mr. Poole, have you or have you not, in fact, started a polyamorous prepper cult? Also, I am a gorilla. I have not, unfortunately. It's just not the case, so that won't be happening.
Giving me some ideas there.
Omar says, Tim, as a Canadian, I'd love if you covered some of the stuff happening up here. 2 weeks ago, an Ontario Conservative MPP was booted from the party for writing a letter to the Premier with sources with suggestions to exit lockdown.
Oh,
wow. Well, it's the Great Reset. It is upon us. The Davos Group is rather successful in all of their efforts, so, good for them. Fubadoo says, hey, Control Pew, don't 3D print guns explode in your hands? Can't stop the signal. Do they explode in your hands?
They absolutely do.
So they don't, because people who are only listening have no idea you held your hands up.
Yeah,
I forget there's like an audio component.
Yeah. He held up his hands. His hands are completely intact.
Either that or I have a really great prosthetics.
I mean, yeah.
Break the Chains Media says, now that Styx Hexenhammer is back in Vermont, you need to get him on IRL. Myself and thousands of others would love to hear you and Styx banter and discuss culture and society. Look at my content, too. I would love to have Styx on the show.
We're going to make that happen.
We're working on it. And smash that like button if you haven't already. It is greatly appreciated. Let's see what we got here. Brent Saigan says, hey, Tim, I fell behind on a bunch of your videos, and to catch up, I listened to them at 2 times speed, and hearing you all live makes you sound drunk. Well, you can always go back and watch these old episodes at 2 times speed as well.
Yes.
I think what we're doing now for the members-only content also has a speed boost, too. So now you should be able to watch that in a lower resolution, and which makes it easier to stream as well as increase the speed.
Cool.
Ken L says, your stream did not show up on my subscription feed. Had to go to Timcast IRL page to see if your stream was live. I'm not surprised, but it was a first. I mean, we put anal swab in the title, and I had a feeling YouTube was going to be like, we don't promote that here. And I was like, I don't care. It's the story. We're doing it.
Important.
If we did something like, I don't know, just use buzzwords. What do you, Minecraft... what's it? Minecraft, Fortnite, PewDiePie, Democrat.
Bazongas.
Bazonga. Boom.
Birthday.
No, if you put bazongas, you're going to get knocked down like anal swab.
I don't know.
Put like birthday and then someone's name, famous name.
Marriage,
birthday
baby,
right now.
birthday.
Yeah.
They do that on Twitter when you see this like.
Someone
happy
did
birthday
someone did on an experiment on Facebook where they would put something like just got married or something in all of their posts because the algorithm would boost those words because people interact with marriage and childbirth. Like, congratulations. So they would be like, I just, gave birth to a baby boy. Anyway, here's my new book. It's coming out. Yep. Lua Coder says, Tim, I am now going out of my way to buy things that are not from China, and I've realized how difficult it is. I refuse to support this regime, and I encourage everyone else to do so, even if it sacrifices convenience. I completely agree. And we do try. We need to try harder, for sure. Pain Cabal says, get FPS Russia over to talk guns with you. That'd be cool. Pirate Tomsky says, that's why it's spreading, Tim. The lefties have been covering the wrong poop hole the whole time. Oh, jeez. Dozer Man says, keep an extra mask in your disgusting pocket. Touch it, cough, and sneeze in it, and realize masks aren't the most sanitary thing to touch and reuse. It just shows you're in the cult. Well, look, There are disposable masks that are super cheap. I understand the purpose of masks, and I really have no problem using it. The problem is the level of absurdity when they're like, now wear two, or in China when they're like, bend over, here it comes again. You know, not really interested in all that. Kargush says, you misunderstand, and it's very important to understand this. They're not getting rid of the gifted programs because of equality. They're getting rid of them because of a belief in equity. That's right.
Yep.
The Black Metal says, I'd be careful with making your own guns. Last month, ATF rated Polymer 80 because of the idea of receivers having no serial. The Biden admin is pushing hard on this ghost gun thing. Yeah, that's what I was saying. I think their goal is to create obstructions and hurdles to make it very difficult for you to do.
And to scare the populace.
Yep. Ghost gun. Sounds scary, right?
And just like if they'll raid one person, it's like, and then they make stories about it, and like, don't let you be the next.
Yeah.
Be
Yeah.
afraid. Don't do it.
King O Jingling says, hi, gang. I'm raising awareness for the farmer protest in India right now. We're trying to repeal 3 agricultural laws that only benefit corporations. The fight against corporate government is the same worldwide. Love your work. I believe corporate government is fascism.
Yeah.
The left likes to say it's not because fascism is ultra-nationalistic, and I feel like that's like a deviation. If you know, the goal of the Nazis and the fascists was like world domination and taking everything over, how is that nationalistic when you're invading other countries? You know what I mean? Also, it's really weird that they keep saying fascist over and over again with like an emphasis on Italy instead of Nazis with an emphasis on Hitler. Like, they call people Nazis for sure, but they really like saying fascist over and over again,
Antifa.
as if like Italy was the prime problem in World War II. They were one of the big problems, but Nazi Germany was it.
I want to give a shout out to the Federal Reserve because I feel like it's the most fascist thing in our country right now. It's like a corporation with no government oversight that's controlling our government, our monetary supply, which is our government.
This is interesting. Octorian says Rand Paul got 45 senators to kill the second impeachment.
Yeah.
Oh, good.
Good. Which means Trump can run again if it's
And
done.
Trump can pour $72 million into a bunch of political campaigns because he repealed that.
The lobbying thing.
Yeah, he's lobbying. I read an article about it yesterday. He's
Well,
already at it.
I think he wants to run again, so he's disavowing the Patriot Party filings. Like, people have filed saying like they're joint fundraising. He's like, that's not true. And apparently he's told Republicans he's not going to start a new political party. I guess that's probably the compromise. He probably went to them and said, if you convict me, I will start a new political party and get people to run against you, and it'll be the end of the Republicans.
Interesting.
Which I think it would be a great thing. I think people need to stop saying, but we have to have the Republican Party. There's a poll showing if people had a choice between the Patriot Party, the Republicans, Democrats, or other, who would they vote for? And Republican and Patriot are split. Democrats have 46%, but if you combine Republican with Patriot Party, it still loses to the Democrats. People are not going to vote for Republicans next time around. It's not going to happen. Because of gerrymandering, there's a possibility the Republicans reclaim the House. That's a play. But I think without Trump, a lot of people are walking away. That's why they need Trump. If they convict him, it's all over for the Republicans. But like I said, even then, in the presidential election, Democrats would win. Forrest Horlacker says, love the work, love you guys, even Ian sometimes. Tim, I disagree with your statement lately to stop calling out the media double standards. I think it's very important that we do not give up and keep people in the know. It may seem redundant to you. Looks like there's another one from him coming up because it's got cut off, but I will just say right now, I'm not saying don't say it. I'm saying it's getting to the point where we all know, and instead of saying, oh no, the double standard, we say, well, there is a double standard and everyone knows, and it's not an issue of like whether it is or isn't real. It is literally real. So let's see. I think there may have been another super chat, but I don't know where it is because it got cut off. But, Vosh says Gatling guns are not machine guns. So you can legally own Gatling guns.
Apparently. I'm not, I don't know.
All depends on your state, too.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
I'm going to investigate that.
Let's see where we're at. Zanzibar says you can make an AR-15 full auto, and I'm not going to read all of this just in case, but he says it is illegal. You should be, yes, you should be able to have it. So I'm not going to read a super chat that mentions something is literally illegal, but apparently you can. They sell conversion kits for this stuff too, isn't it? But it's like illegal. Like the ATF tries to get people to do it.
Yeah, there's a lot of that funny business going around. But,
Don't do it.
yeah.
Obey the law. Zachary Daly says, hopefully you see this. Bought a camera. I can make money from pretty much anywhere. Looking to start broadcasting and recording these instances in the U.S. Since YouTube seems unsafe, what would you recommend? Honestly, I don't know. YouTube will ban you if you're a journalist. So journalists, independent journalists, are just getting nuked across the board because unfiltered content that just shows things happening is a violation of YouTube's rules. I'm not even kidding.
Be a good slave, work for CNN, be promoted in the algorithm, be promoted in the search, and then 5 years later expose all the horrible crap that they did.
Oh, I like that.
What you also use Minds, use multiple platforms and start your own website and host your content on your own website too, and then use things like Twitter and YouTube to promote it as long as you can.
Also, Library and Odyssey, for us anyway, they've been a great platform to host content on. Like, we put all of our files up on there, all of our media goes up on there, and they're one of the few platforms that advertise us as, you know, look, the 3D printed gun people are here.
They're super cool. I mirrored my entire YouTube catalog on Library on Odyssey.
Very cool.
Why isn't someone created a social media platform that just aggregates all the social media platforms?
Because you need all the
that's a good
different
idea.
APIs.
No, you don't. They could open as a browser. You could create an app that just switches between the browsers and it's logged in on each one and it stores
What
the
do you mean
cookie.
switches between the browsers?
So it could just function like a browser.
Okay, so you build a browser. What does it do exactly?
It holds 4 specific tabs for, you know, or whatever social networks, and then you just swipe left and right between all of them, and it's just functioning like a browser. So you'll have someone's YouTube channel, you'll click their profile, and then it'll load up a browser with all of their social media, and you get all of it in one feed because it functions like a browser. If you wanted to get it in like one feed, the API thing I understand, but you could literally just swipe left and right on their different posts.
To just go to their YouTube channel, their Facebook channel, their Twitter channel?
And
Well, I mean,
so
you
you
could just
create-
do that with Brave. You just
Well,
have to open all their channels.
The idea is to create an app where you can follow people but not control banning them because you don't actually host any content. So here's the idea. They say Parler got banned because they were hosting violent content and refused to take it down. Okay, here's what I'll do. I will create an app that allows people to follow each other, but you literally can post nothing. You will never post anything. We will store nothing. The only thing we get is your name. And then if someone clicks your name, you as the person, the only thing you can do is include links to your other social platforms. So if they come to us and say, your app is hosting this, that's not true. That's Twitter. That's not us. All we do is a directory for individuals and their social media.
So like a portal
Kind
platform?
of. But you'd be following them. So you'd pull up your app and then you'd see the individuals and you'd see like, all it would say is, you'd click the person and then you'd see their Twitter and then you swipe, you see their YouTube, you swipe, you see their Instagram, and it functions like a browser. That's it. It's just a browser and it loads the website when you click it. Then you'll be able to follow everybody and they can't ban you. So what happens is, let's say you're on Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. And then I open my app and I'm following Ian Crossland and I go to your name and I see these 3 things where you post. But then one day you're banned from all of them. I still follow you, but now you have no active socials. So you go in and you change the link to Gab. Now when I click you, I still see your posts.
Oh, I see. But you're still following me, so I
Exactly.
don't lose my followship.
Yeah, exactly. You lose no followers and who you're following. And you can be banned a million times. And then eventually you just set up your own website. And then when I click your name, it just loads your website, Ian, superstar.com or whatever.
I like
Maybe I shouldn't have given that idea away. I should
No,
have
Right.
do
done
it.
Maybe you
It's a
should have
great
just
idea.
done
Someone
it.
should build
Yeah.
that.
Well,
Make
maybe
it
someone
open
should just build
source
that.
so people can make
Yep.
more of them in case they try and go
An
after it.
open source directory that allows you to follow anyone but doesn't post anything. So Amazon can't, what are they going to say? Oh, you're hosting this content. We're literally not. It's literally just a browser where someone has like linked to their social accounts. That's it.
I guess let me ask you this. Do you think it would matter to Amazon that you're not actually hosting? Because it doesn't
Yeah,
matter to
partially.
YouTube or Google whether or not you violated their terms
Well,
of service. They're still going to delete your account
Yeah.
or take down the video.
Another thing to really kind of, I saw a new report that came out that talked about how 94% of all child abuse images came from Facebook. When you have that in comparison to Parler being taken down, that's a big difference there. So to add to that point that you were making.
I think the idea would work. I mean, obviously they would try to get rid of it and they would say it's a directory listing a bunch of extremists or whatever. And I'd be like, we don't host anything at all. All we do is it's a list of people, like their names, and then the content is from somewhere entirely different. It's a browser. It's a browser with people who can make suggestions. I guess they can argue people could put in links to like bad sites or something.
Yeah.
But you could make it so that they can only link to Twitter, like they can only link to existing social platforms or whatever.
But then I could link to your Twitter account with my browser, unless the APIs.
yeah.
So they would need the API to verify
No.
that it's me.
Or it's just the wrong account and they're telling you to follow somebody else, I guess.
Hey, it'd be really fun if you blockchained it, and
Yeah.
that way everyone's hosting the content on their own.
Yeah.
Yep.
They're getting the whole
Boom.
blockchain.
There we go.
Yeah. Have you
They
seen?
would still, probably try and remove the app from the App Store or whatever. And that's what people argued too, like when they were banning all these social networks. It's like, dude, what are you going to do, ban a browser? That's literally what they did when they banned Gab's Fediverse app. It was like banning a browser.
What's that? What was that app? What's that thing called?
Fediverse?
No. Gab made a browser extension, I think it's called.
Oh, Dissenter.
Yeah, Dissenter, where you
Smart.
can comment on
I used to
any
love
website.
Dissenter,
yeah. Yep.
PocketNet is like a decentralized blockchain social network. That's pretty promising.
Yeah.
I like where that's headed.
Let's read some more super chats. Geary Vision says, we weren't allowed to use crew-served weapons in many populated areas of Iraq and Afghan due to high numbers of civilian casualties. Pelosi wanted to unleash them on our own streets. Effing disgraceful. Evil personified.
Yeah.
Joe Walton says, Illinois has concealed carry now, but the licensing process takes a very long time. It took my brother more than 6 months to get his. Wow.
Or bribes.
Jeez. Gareth Green says, stability breeds complacency. Forget autocracy and democracy. Anocracy for the win. What's anocracy?
Anarchy?
Well, I don't know. It says anocracy.
I feel like it's anarchy, but like spelled fun.
Martin Edgar says, California has banned potato guns. Okay.
That sounds right.
Thomas Bennett says, Alex, you can still officiate my wedding, buddy. From Tridge.
Yeah, I am a pastor. I can officially marry
right
people.
on. There you go.
And I did it for him, and he never set up a date. So it's on you, buddy. Pick a day.
Spridge Bandersnatch says, Tim, why did it take so long for you to gun up? You should have done it the day the weirdo showed up at your house at 3 a.m., then came back later. Well, we lived like literally next door to the police station, which is why when the dude showed up, the cops were there in like less than a minute. And so I didn't think I needed it. So the cop told me to buy a gun. He's like, well, here's what he said. If it were me, I'd answer the door with a shotgun. But looking at the laws, I was like, I'd still have to run. So it's like someone comes to my door, I have to go out the back door and run away. That's ridiculous. It's just ridiculous.
I mean, maybe take 10 steps and be like, no, he's much faster than I am.
Sure, but then you go to court and they'll be like, we think you could have. And you're like, but I couldn't. Doesn't matter. We think you could have.
Maybe rubber bullets?
I think that wasn't allowed either. I'm not sure.
It's crazy.
Yeah. But anyway, look, ultimately COVID happened and I was like, oh man, like we're going to have to rely on ourselves. It was just like, I didn't think the police would be able to handle mass riots, food riots. And we saw food riots. We saw crazy stuff happening. Not like the worst in the world. And we saw the George Floyd riots. And then when the literal riots happened with George Floyd, I was like, I better go get some guns. But I think I actually was in the process of getting guns well before that.
Yeah, you were.
Yeah.
What,
It was
what
like,
sh- what shocked me was when police stations started shutting down for COVID, and there wasn't a mass. Well, there was a mass. We're going to run out and buy guns, but there's more now than there was then. That surprises me.
AGCast says, Pew is telling you guys the hardcore mode. We're American and can use gun parts like a Glock or RP9 barrels for the latter being $10. I have no engineering background and built an FGC9. It's like PC building.
Cool.
So I could just order those parts and then do it?
Yeah, like we covered a little bit ago. There are mods for the FGC9 that let you use Glock barrels, and you can, with a little bit of skill, a little bit of practice, you can mod it yourself to use a different barrel that you happen to have lying around. So, you know, the options are there if you want to use them. The FGC9 specifically was built by a guy. Well, it was a derivation of another design. The FGC9 was done by a guy in the UK to specifically be, you know, something he would be able to build in the UK and, you know, by extension through most of the rest of the world.
Yeah, it'd be fun to try and put one of those things together.
So yeah, hard mode, absolutely. But
Russell Brown says you can also find ones with different attachments like a CNC laser etcher 3D printer. Interesting. Stephen Chambers says, Tim, please talk about video games more for fun. We 90s kids need to stick together. You could cover game stories that wouldn't be allowed today, etc. I mean, maybe on the website as we expand, that's the plan. We're going to have a bunch of different kinds of content. There's going to be other websites that start emerging from this. The goal with timcast.com isn't just to be this podcast, but to actually expand and do more different sites and things like that, which you will see soon.
And in the meantime, Red Dead Redemption 2 online is $5 on Steam till February. Get it.
Wow.
Or we could all play a video game as a podcast. We could
That'd
all
be
play
fun.
The Last of Us.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And that'd be the podcast.
That'd be awesome.
There you go. Gemcast says, full auto is good when you're outnumbered, alone, in close quarters. That's why government agencies don't like it and wants to know who had them, even the odds. Interesting. J. Mac and Cheese McIntosh says, Tim, love your work. Have you checked out the battle between Reddit and Wall Street over GameStop stock? Could be the shot heard around the world in the Robinhood investor revolution. I've been watching it. I don't know enough about it other than basically some short sellers were trying to like short GameStop. So then Reddit was like, we're just going to buy it. And then it screwed over hedge funds. I don't know the full story. Otherwise, we would have gone over it.
So like a short seller is when someone bets on
The stock's
it's like
failing.
a gambling on that the stock's going to fail, and
Yeah.
people saw all these big corporations gambling that the stock was going to fail, so they all invested in it, raised the stock, and caused these corporations to lose money.
That's insane.
It's awesome.
GameStop,
But it doesn't mean that GameStop's stock is valuable. They're just using it to screw people over, it looks
but
like.
some people are saying that if GameStop switches to an online retailer, they'll own the market.
They should do that.
And they're slow and they're missing the
They're
opportunity.
way behind Steam and Origin and Stadia, which is
Yep.
Microsoft.
Yep. But they could still do it. They
should.
tried shifting. So GameStop tried shifting into a more like geek culture thing with like what's the store called? The Geek something. I don't know, whatever. But I think what they should have done is they should have opened up gaming tables.
Like brick and mortar gaming tables.
Yep. Board games and card games.
Yeah.
And they already sell a lot of that stuff.
I feel so bad with COVID. It's just decimated that industry. I
Yep,
bet.
definitely. Gareth Green says, Tim, the law of scarcity is absolute. Even if we had replicators, there would be a finite number of replicators, not to mention resources necessary to manufacture them. Replicators would make replicators.
And the resource could be light. Photons can be condensed into electrons, which can be...
Yeah, in Star Trek, I believe it's the nacelles collect hydrogen and then use that for their replicators. And then replicators can replicate replicator parts to assemble a new replicator.
You can actually
Crazy.
make light out of the vacuum, and then you can turn light into matter.
I guess the
I
general
have some
idea is
evidence of
there
that.
you do need the matter, and they would collect hydrogen in massive amounts and then use that as the base.
I was posting
for-
about how they're actually creating light out of the vacuum of space, and then they're turning the light into the matter. So, and then you can condense the electrons into hydrogen. Well, I don't know if that's
check us out,
necessarily
Ian.
true.
You'll like this one. Bam says, have you started trying to develop homemade ammo casings? Apparently, shot shells are made of HDPE or LDPE plastic. Full plastic shot shells were experimented on during the 60s and 70s by Winchester.
Yeah, that sounds awesome.
Full plastic.
Yeah, it's been worked on. There's a guy who is actually 3D printing the 12 gauge. I talked about it. And I completely
Shotgun plastic shells.
yeah I've spaced on his username, but it's the Liberator 12K project. It's 12 gauge plastic shotguns.
This is interesting. So I saw this video. Aaron Trucker says, a gaming channel called The Spiffing Brit made a video explaining a YouTube algorithm glitch using community polls. He got over 25 million views in 2 days. It's going to be patched now that it's public, but you could benefit now. I believe The Spiffing Brit is wrong. I believe he's absolutely wrong. So for those that aren't familiar, what he said was YouTube rolled out the community tab function. They wanted people to use it, so they created, a general algorithm that promotes those who post in the community tab. But because no one uses it, you could now make a post, put a bunch of keywords in it, and then YouTube would send it to a ridiculous amount of people. He said that he was able, based on his calculations, to get around 25 million views. Well, first I'll say, I could be wrong about this, but my general understanding is that he got like 150,000 likes, and then said if on average 4% of people click the like button, that should be, what we estimated between 25 or so million or whatever. He said 1 in 40 people, something like that. Anyway, I think he's wrong about the algorithm being a glitch. It's not a glitch. And his discovery of it and exploitation of it is exactly what YouTube's wanted the entire time. And I know this because YouTube's told me this. So, this video comes out and this guy's like, nobody uses it. So if you use it, you'll get a ton of views. And it's like, right? That's what YouTube wants. YouTube wants people to use it and get a benefit from it so that people start using it. Now this video comes out claiming it's an exploit, saying that YouTube's not going to patch this. I don't believe they will, because the algorithm is designed to work with an equilibrium. If only one person uses it, then the only community post anyone on the site will see is from one person. If only 10% of people use it, then everyone will see only 10% of people who use it. Now, because of this video, everyone starts using it, then it's going to balance out and just normalize, and YouTube needs to do nothing. So I've used the community tabs frequently for a lot of things because it's useful when it is, but not for, enough. Seeing that video just made me go, oh yeah, I should post more on the community tab. Not like, wow, what an exploit. No, I fully get it. YouTube emailed me a long time ago saying, we're going to be prioritizing the community tab, and those that use it more will see a higher watch time and we'll see, all these benefits. And I was like, cool, right on. That was it. It's not a secret. YouTube's been telling creators to do this. They've been emailing them, telling them to do this. It just so happened that nobody cared, and some dude discovered that he can get a ton of views because nobody cared. And then he told everybody, I guess, and now he's going to get a lot of play for it. Good for him. I just think it's what YouTube wants. They're happy it's happening. But you can give it a shot if you want. It will benefit you because nobody uses it, right? Callan Shaw Indie Game says, the real question for tonight's guest, will Biden buy back a 3D printed gun, and how much profit margin is Control Pew looking at here? Will he? Is when they do gun buybacks, is there any like restriction on what you can turn in?
I mean, I feel like the more terrifying that they tell you the firearm is, the more money they should give you for it.
Yes.
So if on average I spend $2 per printed firearm, and, you know, I have a lot of R&D, so there's a lot of failed prints that are close enough to being firearms where I think they're firearms, and these people at the buyback aren't going to know the difference. So I feel like I'm looking at a margin of like $400 to $500 per, and I have a box full. So anyone who comes to this buyback after me isn't going to get anything because I'm just going to take all their money.
Well, there you go.
Excellent plan.
Bud Snack says, have you seen the recent Rage Against the Machine propaganda piece? I know they are left, but did not believe they would go that far. I didn't see it. Has anybody seen that?
No. What did they do?
I don't know.
Ian?
Someone messaged me about it. I'll read it really quick.
Hank McCormick says, ask your guest about his opinions about polymer 80 and 80% lowers. I think we did.
I think we talked about it with the buyback, the buy build shoot kit. I think the ATF is wrong, and I think Polymer 80 does good work.
Let's see. Placid Saint says, hey, Tim, the ammo company Phoenix here in Michigan got cited for its employees not wearing masks, and now they're no longer distributing ammo to law enforcement or their departments. Wow, that's funny.
Spicy.
There you go.
Heart you, Phoenix.
There you go. Griffin Games says, all this talk about pew-pews reminds me of a quote about calibers. Quote, 9mm takes care of the body, 45 takes care of the soul. Don't want people coming back as a lich. What's that from?
Well, you said something about liches. What?
Like it sounds like a video game.
Yeah, it was a quote about 45s not wanting, because they don't want people to come back as a lich.
Sounds like ARFCOM lore to me.
They're trying to shatter their what is it called? Their phylactery.
I don't know.
If you destroy the lich's phylactery, they can't respawn. Their
there you
life
go.
essence is bound to it.
So it totally is a video game.
Sterling Moore says, Tim, look up trigger activators. They allow essentially full auto fire by means of a hand crank that attaches to the trigger guard and are legal. Similarly, crank Gatling guns are perfectly legal and considered semi-auto.
So the crank attachment is not legal in the state of Iowa.
Ah.
Federally, yeah, you're probably okay. In the state
So
of Iowa,
what does it do?
certain
It
other
like
states-
it hits the trigger when you
yeah,
crank it?
it's got a little flap on an axle, and as you crank it, it just pulls the trigger.
So how do you hold it? Do you like
So
up
like
at your
like-
shoulder
and then you just like that.
Wow.
Oh my gosh.
See how like you can't regulate it everything. Eventually someone's going to figure out some weird, ridiculous, circuitous system that uses a loophole.
Yeah.
Someone, like I was saying, it's going to get ridiculous. Someone will have an accordion and they're like, I'm just playing music.
I love it.
This is why prohibition never worked.
That's right.
Right.
Government doesn't work.
This is
Government doesn't work. It's all gone.
the Rage Against the Machine. They're doing a documentary on race and racism called "Killing in Thy Name." It's
Are
a
you
15-minute
serious?
mini doc. I haven't seen it though.
You ever seen that video of the people with the Trump flags and like the Blue Lives Matter flag dancing to Killing in the Name of? Or is it Killing in the Name? It's kind of funny because the song is literally about cops killing, non-white people. And there's a Trump supporter with like a thin blue line flag, and they're like singing the song and dancing.
Brilliant.
And then they were, I think Tom Morello, he said, when we wrote the song, we never imagined like this would happen, Well, maybe they don't understand conservatives enough.
I had many interesting conversations with Tom Morello, and he always seemed like someone who didn't like the left and the right, but I guess that's changing now.
Money
sadly.
talks, BS walks. Tiger says, there are over 100 million AK-47s on Earth. If 99% of them magically vanished, it leaves one per day for the next 2,739 years. There will never be a world without guns. They're too easy to make. Google Dara Adam Kell, Pakistan. Interesting. William Samet says, Tim Pool gives horrible advice. He tells people to smash that like button, but I am a gorilla, and now my computer is broken. Give it
Sorry.
a little tap. Just a little teeny tap.
Sorry.
Headbutt.
Joshua Inzer says potassium nitrate. Check out Dr. Stone.
Yes.
Is that what's in the bat
Yeah,
poop?
that's bat
There
poop.
you go. Gunny Arlequin. Are we talking about metal printing for cases or one-use plastic? I'm guessing the 55,000 PSI of a 5.56 would not agree with plastic.
Yeah, probably. single-use plastics for a lot of like lower pressure black powder stuff, 12 gauge stuff. Shotguns can probably get away with it. For rifles, we're going to need some sort of casting to get involved in if we're going to use the FDM space.
All right. Abrasive FPV says, I received my Type 07 FFL a few weeks ago. Currently tooling up to start selling extremely affordable 3D printed guns. Control Pew and Ivan have been an inspiration for me. The mission is to legally arm as many people as possible for as little as possible.
Yeah.
Interesting. A store that sells 3D printed guns. They'd be really cheap, wouldn't they?
I would imagine, until you get insurance involved.
It's like I was. It's like I was saying. Like Kodak disposable cameras. You know, you don't need a camera. You just go and you buy the disposable one. It's got the film. You can't reload it. You bring it in. They break it open. Get the film out. That's it. You buy the 3D printed gun, and once the magazine's in, it's a 20. It's got 20 rounds that can't be reloaded, like a Kodak disposable camera.
I wonder if you could brace plastic bullets like with metal. So like instead of printing the whole case out of metal, you print it out of plastic and then you cap it with a little bit of metal so that when it hits pressure, it doesn't shatter. Like if the metal could somehow brace, so you don't have to. You just say, I don't know.
How does the Liberator is pure plastic with a nail, right?
Yes.
So that plastic can withstand the pressure of the 9mm, obviously, for a certain amount of rounds.
So the Liberator's using either a 38 ACP or 32, which are pretty low power pistol cartridges, and the barrel is very thick.
Could you do 22? I know it's rimfire, but would you be able to do it?
I have seen it done. I don't know like the longevity of that.
Yeah. So I'd imagine it's a much weaker.
It's not. So it deals with chamber pressures. That initial shock is what creates the fracture and then destroys the barrel.
Interesting.
So it's a little higher than the others, but
oh, okay.
Yeah.
So it's worse.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Well, the more you learn, There you go. All right, let's grab a couple more of these. Kami Sama says flamethrowers are not legally weapons in Michigan. Long live the murder cube. There you go.
They're legal almost everywhere except for 2 states.
That's irritating.
Jose Gonzalez says Tulsi Gabbard was on Tucker Carlson an hour ago, and she'd definitely be an awesome Republican candidate. Isn't that funny?
Yeah.
Yeah.
She
Tulsi's
released
great.
she released a very powerful video today comparing John Brennan to
And Adam Schiff.
using an Adam Schiff to trying to institute KGB tactics here in the United States
She
for
said
their surveillance state.
She said they're a bigger threat and more dangerous than those who stormed the Capitol.
Yeah.
Yep.
She said the John Brennans and the Adam Schiffs who want to institute a KGB police state in this country.
Is she
Woo,
wrong?
Tulsi Gabbard.
Yeah.
Tulsi
Man.
just started a locals account.
Oh, did she?
That's Dave Rubin's social network.
There you go.
She's going social.
Very
there you
cool.
go. Janet Partridge says, Tim, just wanted to thank you. I used to paint realism paintings and oils. I haven't done a painting in 5 years. Thanks to you, I'm getting back into it. I just wanted you to know your messages do get through.
Cool.
Appreciate it.
That's awesome.
Well, if you haven't already, go to timcast.com and become a member because we will have bonus segments, more bonus segments. And next week, we're going on a special top secret mission, which we will film much of and create a special members only video, which may involve something that rhymes with Schmifty G and Re. Did that work?
No. You confused a whole bunch of people. You
Good.
sound like QAnon.
It's okay. Let me try again. It rhymes with Schmifty Malibur.
Okay, there you go.
That worked, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're gonna make a video, hopefully, and we're going out special mission, and that may be the plan. So I'm hoping that's how it works out, but it'll be for members only, and we will be back, of course, live tomorrow night. You can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, Parler at I'm sorry, not Parler. Wow, why did I say Parler? Parler's gone.
will be back.
Yes.
Twitter, Instagram, mine's at Timcast. I do have a Gab account. I've never posted there, but I'm Gab at Timcast as well. And like I said, timcast.com to become a member. Alex, do you want to shout out your social media, your projects, where people can download your guides to learn about 3D printed guns?
Yeah, so first place you go, theguide.controlpew.com. That'll get you started in 3D printing. Controlpew.com is my site. We'll post updates about what's going on in the community, new file releases, news and events. And finally, all of my social medias, I am Control Pew. If you click the little menu on the side of my site, you'll get all of them. I'm everywhere.
Right on.
I live by a very simple motto. If the government exists, you have to watch out for your sphincters. A very simple, common, information that I share on my YouTube channel, We Are Change. The shirt that I'm wearing right now says, thinking is extremely dangerous to our democracy. You could get it at thebestpoliticalshorts.com. And I thank you guys for watching and participating in this show. You guys are really freaking cool. And thanks for giving me the opportunity to talk to everyone.
You guys are really freaking cool, man.
Right?
You said it's guides slash CTRLP.
Theguide.controlpew, so CTRLPEW.com.
Got it. Hey, I want to give a special thanks to Tim Poole for purchasing me this graphene for Christmas. This is pure graphene.
Cool.
I knew it was the perfect gift.
Yeah,
Yes.
it really is. And I'm going to be spinning this in a moment, but Alex, I'll show this to you in a bit because when you were talking about making black powder, this stuff is black powder. So I wonder, and it's pure carbon. So I wonder if this will somehow be a future
Interesting.
ammo. I just want to give a shout out to Graphene, spin it for you. And you can follow me at Ian Crossland. I believe we're going to be gaming later tonight on twitch.tv/Ian Crossland. So come follow me there. Follow me on Twitter, and I'll shout you out on Twitter when I'm about to go live.
Super cool. And then me in the corner, I looked up anocracy since somebody mentioned it in the super chat. And apparently it is really a thing. It's a form of government that is loosely defined as part democratic and part dictatorship, or as a regime that mixes democracy with autocratic features. So that's kind of interesting.
Interesting.
Today I learned. Okay, so I finally figured out my socials. So on Instagram and Gab, I am at Real Sour Patch Lids. And on Twitter and Minds, I am just Sour Patch Lids. So you can follow me at any of those places.
And of course, we'll be back live, like I mentioned, and you can check out my other YouTube channels, youtube.com/Timcast, youtube.com/TimcastNews. The goal of what we're doing with Timcast.com is going to be more than just this show. It's going to be eventually more personalities. It's going to be a bigger brand. It's going to be a bunch of stuff, and you'll see. Don't worry. It's coming, and there's a lot I can't necessarily talk about now, but we're going to take care of everybody and make sure everybody is who wants to be a part of it can be. So trust me on that one. Other than that, stick around because we'll have some bonus content coming up at timcast.com for members only. And we will see you then later today. Thanks for hanging out, and we will see you next time or whatever later, guys.
Bye, guys.